Come on. Load the stream. Load the stream. What's up, gamers? Load the stream. I'm gonna do a bit, and I don't want to do the bit. I'm not streaming. It's gonna get recorded on the bot. Soda can. Alright, let me just, oh shit, I don't want that. I don't want that on that tab. Oh shit, no spoilers. No, 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 you can't see that. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Wait, why? No, I changed my stream title. Why is that? Please tell me it's not showing up. Is that still? Oh my god. Okay, it did work. Okay, 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 okay. Gotta show the stream. Alright. Alright. So what's up, gamers? So you caught me in the middle of calcing for Run and Bun, you know? Why am I suffering so much? Well, that's a great question. As you can see, you've caught me on my PB actually. Um, you can see we've got actually a pretty decent box. You know, there's some hits. You know, there's some hits. Say hi to the hits. Um, and there's some not hits. Say hi to the not hits. At least you got Magnapole. Oh boy, Octillery, my favorite. Believe it or not, this run actually has made it all the way to Full Arbor, just past Vito, with one death, which I would say is actually pretty incredible. But I am having a lot of serious trouble getting through the Meteor Falls Gauntlet, um, which is probably going to kill the run. So whenever I start up on YouTube again, streaming, you know, I'll start fresh runs. Mostly for integrity, right? Like, I don't want to, you know, jump scare people with like, oh yeah, you know, it's a fresh run. I promise. And then I start in Full Arbor Town having already beaten Vito with one death. It's like, okay, sure, yeah, you know. Oh yeah, yeah, you got, you know, you got the early game box. You got Hamilton, you got Torterra with good IVs. You got Masquerain, you got a good actually yeah, this is a pretty good Dreadnought, I guess. You got Obstagoon, who's pretty good. You got the early game Corviknight, you kept it alive. You got the Eldegoss, you know. You got Togedemaru, you know. So it's like I don't wanna like make like I, you know, hit it big and you missed half of the run essentially. I feel like that's pretty disingenuous in terms of like trying to make stream content. I do also apologize real quick because I know I have not been active lately. Real life is a bitch. So in return, I wanted to present you all with a video that I was kind of, I don't want to say bullied by my friends into doing, but like they mentioned it as like a funny gag that someone else had done, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I can do that. That's funny. So we're watching a certain YouTube video that is 6 hours long by an individual known as Lily Orchard on YouTube. Um, we're not watching the full thing on this stream. Um, and I do want to make it very clear, because this is a somewhat controversial figure, that this is neither an endorsement of Lily Orchard nor a critique of her, because there's a lot of complicated stuff and drama. There is a lot of tea that I have found online, as well as a response video on her channel that I have not watched either of. And as such, I'm going to make no comment on that situation. This video is going to probably inevitably criticize this video essay because I've heard a lot about it. I've heard it's not very good. But I do not want to make this about the person making the videos, because I have not I've not consumed any of her content. I want to make sure that I do this in a method where I am critiquing a video that I think may not be good. I won't know for certain until I've watched it, but I've heard some stuff about it that's probably gonna lead me to drawing particular conclusions. And so I just feel the need to preface it with this being not a personal attack, but a criticism of a video, because I am milling a more popular YouTuber for content. That is what's happening here. Yeah. Probably able to slide in, see what's up before we start. Maybe put on some music in the background. Oh wow, my YouTube recommended #1. It's me. That's crazy. Let's just put on the chill playlist while I wait, see if anyone shows up. I suppose I should briefly go into what the suffering level is. I don't know what policy is on drunk streams. But you know, I have this this potion here that my witch's brew, if you will, that I bought from the supermarket. And in the name of making this a mildly more interesting content, I'm going to be consuming some of the witch's brew as we go along. And whenever I feel the need to pause the video to tackle something, this is going to be the rule. I'm going to increase the suffering level, shall we say, for lack of a better double entendre. And that will be our sort of how you know that I am under the influence of external forces beyond mortal ken, but how I don't have to make this incredibly explicit for anyone else. Yeah, that's gonna be the deal. So without further ado, we're gonna start the suffering level, with a little bit, so it has begun. I'm already suffering. I do think I might actually crop this a little bit. Hold on. So I can see right now it's not quite. Okay. And then there's some stuff at the top. I might as well, nah, that doesn't look very good. Alright, let me rearrange a little bit. Move the chat. Suffering level. Oh, her. Her. We'll move her over here now that it fits. Alright. Suffering level's up to 1 for now. Alright, and I think we will begin. Welcome to the stream bit equation. And so it begins. Oh, we're not gonna... Okay, hold on.
Pokemon is old. Really old.
Okay. That is not... Oh, that is stuttering a fair bit. Let me see what I can do. Let's hope this helps.
You just won't believe how vastly, hugely, mind-bogglingly old it is. With the main series alone that spans 38 games in less than 30 years, it's unbelievably massive in scope. I mean, people say Kingdom Hearts has been going on a long time, but not counting remakes, that series...
Who says that? Kingdom Hearts came out on the PS2. This is not a long-standing series. Kingdom Hearts has a lot of games. It is not that long-standing a series. Like, okay. If this is the first thing I have to take umbrage with, we're not. We're gonna be here for a while.
Series only has 13 games, and when you really think about it, only 7 are required. Pokemon has been around longer than some of you have been alive. It's a more common household name than Mickey Mouse. I've grown up with Pokemon just as much as I've grown up with other game franchises. But the question is, how do they actually hold up? Pokemon as a franchise is steeped in nostalgia. It's a common sentiment that your favorite generation is the first one you played. Heated discussions about which generation was the best can get dominated by the generations that marked themselves a generational divide. But how much of that is based on things that just don't exist anymore? Many of these games have features that don't work and take far too much time to really dig into, and which you needed to enjoy the game already to get the most use out of. See, when people talk about the Pokemon games, I feel they tend to get bogged down in the features or the memories. Nostalgia is a very powerful tool, especially with some of the mid-gen games. To hear some people talk, for instance, you would be forgiven for thinking that Generation 1 was this magical experience that changed people's lives, but in reality it was just the first open-world game on a handheld console. To hear people talk, you would think the Unova games had this deep, rich story that delved into complicated, mature topics, but in reality it's actually a story about the very weak premise of, well, I sure do love opinions, and yeah, it's kind of a you had to be there bit. But my question is, can you still play these games without the nostalgia today when all you have is the main game, the competitive scene is dead, and
I so badly don't want to pause this but I have so many problems with the sentiment.
Without friends to crawl around the underground with? These games still have a main storyline and a progression path. Does that part hold up on its own? And most important, did it ever hold up at all? Do these games...
Okay. Yes. Yes, it did work. Okay. I should preface this with my take. There is no perfect Pokemon game. I am a fan of the series. I have a lot of nostalgia for some of the games of the series. I do think there's a lot of genuinely good game design in the series. I think there's a lot of genuinely awful game design in the series. But I think the intro to this is incredibly uncharitable immediately to the series, which, like, it reads to me as almost an attempt to, like, I guess brush off a lot of the series' good aspects as purely nostalgia, instead of going into this with an open-minded set of criticism, right? Like, you know, rather than looking at the game and saying, okay, well, I remember this very fondly, I'm going to go into this, I'm going to go try and evaluate what of it is genuine so that I remember loving and enjoying, and how much of it is nostalgia. Because that's a genuine point of analysis you can take an argument with. That's not what's going on here, right? Open world is when there is a world. True! My favorite open world game, Final Fantasy 13. Classic. But no, this opening reads like bad faith criticism. Obviously don't know what direction this is going to go, but that's how it reads. It reads like bad faith criticism.
Hold up as RPGs. That's the premise I'm working through. How does Pokemon hold up as a game, rather than a loose collection of memories? Well, in this monstrous nightmare project I've tentatively called a video, we're about to find out. This is a complete retrospective on Pokemon.
Could this not have been, like... Could this not have been a bunch of separate videos? Could this not have been, like... Your boyfriend? What? Okay, that one's not wrong. I'm sorry. Was that a picture of Meganium with the correct starter text? Was that a picture of... I'm going back. Yup, that's a take. That is a take that you can have. That is a take you can have. Cameron, you have missed, essentially, me saying, oh, this intro reads like a pretty bad faith criticism. And then me, pausing to critique things very rarely, because the rule is that whenever I pause the video. I have to take a drink of my delicious, delicious Coca-Cola, legally. We're 2.5 minutes in. I've paused the video 4 times. We're doing great. Yeah. I actually like Meganium from a design perspective. I think it's pretty good. Like, solid upper B, low A tier as far as starters go. I think she's beautiful. The correct starter? In what context? Not even the best starter of Gen 2. Design-wise, and definitely not the best starter, like, functionality-wise. Okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on. Ghost True. Angry... Capital... Okay, yep, okay. An actual critique of capitalism. Okay, fair enough. Those are some Gen 1 Pokemon. I agree.
Gen 1, the OG, the retro, the... God, what are some other flowery words for old? The vintage, there we go. It's in vogue these days to kind of trash on Gen 1 for its glitches and lack of content and oversaturation of modern Pokemon and terrible artwork and messed up approach to game balance.
Did you say oversaturation of modern Pokemon? Why are you criticizing Gen 1 for that? That's not... I paused. I should not have paused. I could just have... So true. God. If there's one thing I hate more than bad faith criticism of Pokemon games, it's the term first partner Pokemon and also powerhouse Pokemon. Joe Merrick, if you ever see this video, I appreciate the work you've done collating Pokemon resources into Cerebi.net. I think it's a great resource for Pokemon fans of any caliber, whether super invested in the series or casual. Do not call them powerhouse Pokemon. I don't care if you don't like pseudo-legendaries because it's not an official title. None of these groups are super official anyway. Do not use powerhouse Pokemon. It's so bad. Okay, we're moving on. Also, I should clarify, this number is not like shots. It is a sip from a can of a drink. Oh yeah, sure, I can turn up the video volume. We'll do that. Let me know further feedback if it's still too quiet.
And excuse plot and simplistic antagonists and the fact that it's not on the DS. Oh fuck, I wasn't supposed to say that one out loud. But I found that the trashing is done without merit,
What?
at least from a very wrong-headed place. Most arguments against Gen 1 cite the lack of tertiary features, the lack of a story, and the bugs. But personally, most of those are a positive, not a negative. It might not have a story, but having played the games that have one, honestly, I'm glad it doesn't. I'm glad there's still a Pokemon game out there, as flawed as it is, that just lets you go on your own adventure. It's something I feel Pokemon has gotten too far away from as the
No,
years go
actually,
on.
I
It's hard
respect
to
this.
introduce
I
Gen 1
respect this,
because its
actually.
main selling point is that it was the first. Nothing in the games has remained only in those games. All of its mechanics are just the baseline mechanics of every Pokemon game. So let's just jump right into it and get this ball rolling. So in Gen 1, we start off getting to name our rival because his grandfather can't remember his grandson's name. Actually, wait, I can't believe I'm already making a tangent, but isn't it weird that between this and him asking you your gender in the Gen 3 remake, the latter became more memed on? Gen 3 adds gender select and the weird parody webcomics come out in full force. Honestly, Professor Oak was ahead of his time. He doesn't assume. Trans ally Professor Oak. Can't say the same for the manual, though. Oh yeah, I named my rival Sketchy. My mom tells me to look for...
You cannot call Professor Oak a trans ally when there's no non-binary option. Okay, bits aside, I actually do think that talking about Gen 1 as being a more open experience, not open world, that is not a statement I would make about that game, but a more open experience relative to later games, which is far more handholdy, is actually a real compliment to like Generation 1. I think it's a real asset that Kanto has as a region, is being more open to explore. This is not necessarily a thing that makes it directly superior to the following games, but something is that I would definitely say is, yeah, a big selling point of Kanto as a region, and why we've seen it 17 times. Now that said, would I say that I would rather the latter games not have a story? No! No, I wouldn't. Who would say that? Would you rather they don't even try to have a story? Is that the point? We're moving on.
Professor Oak, and when I go to check the grass, because naturally that is the first place anyone would look, he comes out of my house, so I guess he was hiding in the closet. Are you my dad? He takes me to his lab where Sketchy's waiting for the both of us and lets me choose a Pokemon. I chose Bulbasaur. Because it's correct. Sketchy chose a fire type
Why
because
is it
of course
correct?
he did. And
I
then
mean,
he
it
wants
is,
to
but
fight.
why?
Wouldn't be Sketchy if he didn't want to compete in something I just picked up that day.
Justify your arguments.
Beats me. Should have gotten the suspicious potion first. Whatever, I got that and a free one from the salesman. Dude, you're the worst salesman ever. Went to the mart and got deputized into a special delivery service. This place is very trusting. How do you know I'm not going to steal it? I took it back to Professor Oak, so I guess he really did know. He gives me a Pokedex and tells me to fill it. By myself, I am 10. And now I'm completely off the leash. Record time, actually. If there's one thing about Gen 1 that still holds up, it's the fact that it quickly lets you off the choke chain to let you play the game. Even the catching tutorial is optional. If you don't know how to catch Pokemon, you can ask this guy, and he actually tells you you can ask him the first time you pass him, but you can say no and carry on with your day. It's really that simple.
Actually,
and I was actually
true.
surprised
Actually
back to Gen 1 just how simple it was. I mean, we all talk about how Pokemon should let people skip the catching tutorial, and this becomes a weird debate among some people, but it exists in the first Pokemon game. And I find people forget that this was something we figured out a long time ago. So I snagged myself a Pidgey before moving on to Viridian Forest. In the forest, I was looking intently for a Caterpie, for far longer than seemed usual, actually. I kept running into Weedle instead, so I looked it up, and it turned out that the encounter rate for some Pokemon is different based on the version, not just the exclusives. No, I don't care for that. Should have played yellow version, Lil. I did eventually find a Metapod, though. I really want a Butterfree because I have a bone to pick with literally every single PokeTuber on the planet. See, because my generation is kind of dumb, there's this idea that because Butterfree doesn't get stab moves, that makes it useless, that it's an early game Pokemon and you should soon replace. I disagree with that attitude, and I think that attitude is why Whitney and Cynthia made you all into whimpering piles of mulch and made you think you need to trick out a Weavile to even stand a chance. Also, Butterfree is literally perfect. Look at her. She is baby. Moving on to the first gym, and you know what? I kind of admire it.
What? What? How do I unpack this? There's a lot to unpack here. First of all the people who are saying Butterfree is not good, you very specifically called out one person. That's a choice. Second of all, even if Butterfree did have stab moves, which it can't get because this is Gen 1 and there are no good bug stabs. I think it's just is it just Twin Needle in Gen 1? Am I going crazy? Is it just Twin Needle? Anyways, so here's the reason why Butterfree is bad in single player from someone who knows what they're talking about to some extent. It's not bad, actually. That's the take. No one ever thought Butterfree was bad in single player. Butterfree falls off comparatively. But like as far as, you know, early game Pokemon go, Butterfree's been like consistently a pretty good pick for like the early game, at the very least in every generation I think it's been available because of its early evolution. It gets like confusion early on, even when it's not a stab option, is just a good move, even though a lot of early game enemy trainers do have like rock types or flying types. You know, not even non-stab psychic moves. It's just a good move to have, especially in the context of the game she's talking about, Generation 1 RBY, where psychic type is just the best type. Asterisk, unless you're playing competitive, in which case normal is better. I would maybe consider psychic could be better in single player, but they're both very anyway. Getting off topic. Point is, Butterfree's access to early confusion makes it really good in the early game against the abundance of poison types you'll fight in Mount Moon Team Rocket fights, random trainers, wild bug catchers in the early game. It's just an incredible early game carry mon. It will not carry you through Brock, but that's fine. You have your starter for that. And if you don't, well, that's a genuine kind of issue as Gen 1 design. But that's not what we're talking about. In later generations, Butterfree gets even better because it gets like compoundized powder moves for like status effects, which is kind of fucking insane. And I believe it even gets Quiver Dance in later generations. Let's actually double check that. Google saved me. Butterfree Yeah, it gets tinted lens for hidden ability in later gens too, which definitely helps. So like even in that, like obviously you're never getting a hidden ability early, but like it's definitely something. And yeah, it does get Quiver Dance. So like this is a Pokemon that exists. People don't think Butterfree is shit. I don't know what this opinion came from. Maybe you're upset that people are like, oh, it's not a great E4 candidate because it has a bunch of weaknesses, and they're right. It's not the best candidate for that at all, but it's not unusable, and no one's saying it is. Okay, we're moving on.
Brock even says at the start that his whole gimmick is defense, and unless you open with Squirtle, it's not going to be a straight one-shot. But there's something clever here. See, Brock's Onix uses Bide, a move that relies on taking damage, and it can very easily fuck you over if you feed it. A lot of people have pointed out that Bide is pretty useless because it gives the enemy an opening to set up status
Does
moves.
Bulbasaur really not get a stab move at this point?
That's what the game is trying to convince you to do. As early as the first gym, the game is teaching you that status moves are the way to go. And for a Pokemon that is as defensive as Onix and has as low attack as Onix, Bide is a really good move to have. Well, it's not good in competitive, Lily. Yeah, but competitive has always been an afterthought. And I'm not talking about post-game, I'm talking about
competitive has always been a...
That's why I'm doing it this way. Anyway, that aside was to cover the fact that all I really did was shut them
really
down with
weird
HC. First badge acquired. And Metapod was just a little bit from evolving, so I had to go take out another Weedle, which felt a little anticlimactic, honestly. But whatever, the important part is I have a Goral, who knows 0 new moves. Oh, god damn it! Mount Moon is the second dungeon in the game, and the first point of no return. After you clear it, it's impossible to get back to Pewter City until you unlock access to Diglett's Cave in Vermilion. Mount Moon is your first introduction to Team Rocket, a group of Pokemon thieves that are plundering the mountain for Clefairy and fossils. They're all over the dungeon, but in truth you only have to fight maybe 3 or 4 to get through as they are actively blocking your path. This is an interesting decision because it means you get to decide how much you want to care about Team Rocket. Are you going to go through the process of stopping every grunt for the XP, or just take the ones that actively get in your way? That sounds like a weird thing to praise, but later games don't let you show this level of indifference to their evil teams. Toward the end, I picked up the Helix fossil because I'm a cringy bitch who thinks internet memes are funny. Coming into Cerulean is where you find your first mandatory rival battle. You know, there's an awful lot of debate about the whole mean rival v friendly rival dichotomy.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What the fuck is this? Did you play this game? Have you played Generation 1? In what fucking universe is Blue classified as a friendly rival? And also, what is going on with the restraining order category? Like, what? Like, I can see a context where you're like, I am annoyed that Hop doesn't leave me alone, so I'm going to put him in the restraining order category for the bit, right? Like, I can see where that might be conceived as a good bit, but Nemona does not do that nearly as much. Like, yeah, she does show up a couple times in the story, but like not nearly to the extent that Hop does. I often like, yeah, no into Gen 3 6. Yeah. I mean, Gen 5 on its own has like a whole spectrum of rivals from mean to friendly. And then Gen 6 is just like Five Guys burgers and fries all in the friendly category. Yeah. Anyway, before we actually get into the takes on these rivals, which I'm sure she'll give from time to time, Sharon, it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum. Sharon is somewhere between mean and friendly. He's an asshole, but he's not mean, you know? He's just a dick. So, you know, in terms of, like, how I'm gonna actually think, like, Nemona is Goku, right? Nemona is Goku. She wants to be the strongest. She loves fighting. Strong fight good, strong fight good. And, you know, you can like that or not like that, but it doesn't mean she goes in restraining order. What is this tier? Okay, moving on.
is a mean rival. I know much of Pokemon fandom is on the internet and people on the internet think making friends is hard, but Blue and Red always seem to me like really close friends. Blue can come off like a smarmy asshole, but I mean, is 10. His dialogue always comes off more like good-natured slagging, like the two are always competing with each other, but in a...
He literally jokes about not being able to kill your Pokemon.
Last one to complete the Pokedex is a rotten egg, and his catchphrase, smell ya later, is just see ya later with a different sense. And when you're 10, you think that's the height of comedy. And he's right, that is the height of comedy. Look at his actual dialogue in the game itself. He slags you off quite a bit, but never too much that it becomes unreasonable. He's a sore loser, but he talks to the player and gives them information like a kid going, hey, guess what I found? You should go check it out. I have no problem believing these two are friends. In fact, this is the most believable rival friendship in the entire series because the two of you are in competition, but it's clearly a friendly one. I honestly don't even know why the term rival even exists. Most people in real life don't have rivals, much like how most people don't have enemies. I know the cartoon wrote Gary as an actual bully and full of himself rich kid, and I think people let that color their perception of Blue as a character. Then again, I have also noticed that people on the internet today are extremely touchy in regards to someone else simply seeming pompous. Internet dwellers treat arrogance like it's the single worst sin imaginable, and so I'm not surprised a lot of people took it weirdly personally when Blue slags the player off. We often blame children for the decisions of Game Freak, like the rival's characterization or the hand-holding the games are played with, but the truth of the matter is that people my age have been complaining about these games being too hard for a long time. Like, it wasn't Gen Z that made Whitney and Cynthia into a meme, or complained about a non-issue like the HMs. I honestly think one of the reasons characters
non-issue
like
why is there a
so popular isn't because they have compelling
I did
character
hear about
arcs,
this actually. I did know about that.
And I think it's largely people my age who like that about them. They often say they don't, but I think that's just social desirability bias. Every gamer has a praise kink, no matter how hard they try to convince you otherwise. Lily, stop bringing BDSM into Pokemon. It works as a metaphor, alright? I like Blue, and I like him specifically because he comes off like a more genuine friend than the sycophantic warbling of later rivals. Anyway, after helping Bill get out of his fursuit and getting a cruise ticket, we're finally able to challenge Misty.
I agree with praising Blue as a rival character, but
whatever,
like,
Misty is a water-type trainer, so Ivysaur's got this in the bag. Just constantly whipping those stars. Whip them good. See, I told you it worked as a metaphor. Second badge acquired.
That's not a metaphor!
No, the gym and the SSN. Oh yeah, also Diglett's Cave. The
You're using a move called Fine Whip. It's not a metaphor. It's literal.
You just go right to your rival and the captain if you want, but I want that juicy XP, so I barged into every cabin and beat up everyone's pets like the completely reasonable person I am. I don't have a problem. Fuck you. Now that I've cut, I can open the gym where... Oh, fuck, the trash puzzle. Nope, 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 nope. Oh, hey. Oh, hey. Okay, so I'm through the trash puzzle and I caught a Diglett, which means I win.
Decent
Your
bit,
XP
admittedly.
can't save you now. Third badge acquired. Now that I have the third badge, I can go north to Saffron City and then west to Celadon. Actually, no, I can't because the guard is too thirsty to let me through. What I can actually do is go back to Cerulean City, take a roundabout route through this winding cliffside, go through a dangerous pitch-black tunnel, cut through a haunted oubliette, go through another underground tunnel, and then into Celadon. Just a small detour. I'd almost forgotten just how dreary the mid-game is. After you leave Rock Tunnel, your next task is to go through 2 back-to-back rocket areas, 3 if you decide to hammer out Silphco right away. You can skip the rocket hideout by using a Pokédoll on Marowak, but for sake of this video, I didn't. And going through the track of Team Rocket's hideout, then Celadon Gym, and then Pokemon Tower is not great. It's too many dungeons and cities with very little overworld to break it up. And this is only compounded by the fact that the next area after this is the very long and very interesting area between Lavender Town and Fuchsia City. Gen 1's biggest problem is that it's often unevenly spaced, and a lot of the major areas are clustered in Celadon and Saffron. It's a similar issue I have with Goldenrod in Generation 2. Too much is crammed in here, and you end up spending way more time in this area than you'd ever want to at any other point. I actually slammed out Celadon Gym first since Pidgeotto and Butterfree needed the easy XP, and since I was going to be in that basement
I
for
never
a while,
spent
go
much
into the
time
game
in the
corner,
hub
you
area
beat
at
up the guard,
all.
and dive into the basement for a series of moving tile puzzles, which I don't wish to be melodramatic, are the worst fucking things in the game. Not because the movement itself is bad, but because it's so painfully slow. Later games speed this up.
Agreed,
wow,
actually.
This is cursed. I move through one floor, get the lift key, move through the second, get to the elevator, we meet Giovanni for the first time. Giovanni's thing is ground-type Pokemon, unlike the rest of his team who uses Pokemon that are the easiest in the game to actually get. Yeah, that actually says something about Giovanni. Like, he went out of his way to import a Kangaskhan for himself, but just drags up whatever can be found on the cheap for all of his grunts. Makes no difference because this capitalist rat's going down. After that, we're headed to Lavender Town, the only real point of interest in this part of the game, which stands out by how bleak and sad the whole place is, and how migraine-inducing the music is because some dick decided, hey, let's make this track really loud and harsh and see how much we can torture the Game Boy speaker. They tortured that poor little speaker until it was begging for more. I mean, mercy. And frankly, I don't think we needed to know
Why
what
is
the
there
effects
so
of
much
VR
allusion
headsets
to
would be if they
kink
were
in
focused
this?
entirely on your ears, but somebody at Game Freak would apparently
Like,
disagree.
once or twice
Whoever
is
wrote
funny,
these
but
tracks owes
this
me
is a
some
lot in a
Tylenol.
short
Lavender
stretch of
Town is
time.
practically infamous for how sharp of a tonal shift it is, inspiring about 20,000 crappy ghost stories written by kids. But honestly, I think that's about the only real value Lavender Town has. Personally, I always found the Viridian Forest theme to be much creepier, but there's nothing as charming as reading some bad campfire story about the cartridge ejecting itself from the Game Boy at Mach 5 and lodging itself in your throat to punish you for looking at ghosts. Yeah, there's my hot take of the day. Lavender Town is actually kind of shit, and its only entertainment value is kids scaring each other with rumors and creepypasta. Otherwise, it's just another too long dungeon that demonstrates how weak ghosts are to psychic in this game. This part of the game is open-ended, but it's clear they want you to go in a particular order because the levels of individual Pokemon do not actually compensate for which way you're going. After Erica, Koga and Sabrina have huge spikes in levels because the game assumes you're going to have gone through 3 entire dungeons before reaching them, and you'll have had to have gone through at least 2 of them to get to them anyway. You're not getting to Fuchsia City without the Pokeflute, and you're not going to Sabrina without Silphco. Sure, you can do them in any order if you're determined enough, but you still have to do all of them, and there is a very strict recommended order right on the trainer card. After the gauntlet that is Celadon and Lavender Town, you get to go through the best route in the game, Route 12. It takes you through a bridge, over a coastline, down into a fenced path, and then back onto the main road to Fuchsia City. It's the longest route in the game, packed to the brim with trainers, and there's no rest stop at any point. This is one of the few points in the game that feels like you're actually traveling. The route is so expansive, and it actually takes a while to get to Fuchsia City. It replicates the arduous journey of traveling between towns as best as the Game Boy can. I love this route so much. It really captures what I mean.
Okay. First of all, I don't think this route is good. Like, it's not bad or anything, but it's just not eventful. Like, there's not that much to find, and a lot of, like, the fence maze area just isn't very flavorful. It's just kind of boring. Second of all, who goes this way to Fuchsia City? Did you not get the bike? Cycling road did you not? Am I wrong in saying that most people just took cycling road down? Am I wrong in saying that? Anyways, my real criticism of this take is that I do agree that having large areas to explore is actually a good thing, but realistically, this is not a good example of that, because unlike other cavernous areas like, you know, Seafoam Islands, fucking Victory Road, and other power plant, other dungeons, there's not much to find, right? Like, there's a lot of optional trainers, but all of them, for the most part, have pretty underwhelming, unexciting teams, and the items you get in Pokédollars aren't that useful, aside from XP. And as far as you need the XP goes, yeah, but I don't want to be corralled into doing a mundane activity of uninteresting fights in order to be able to bypass, to get through a level check at the next gym. And it's not like the level scaling on these routes is particularly good either at, you know, gradually ramping you up to the next gym challenge. No. It ends up being a very steep jump regardless, because of the fact that the game's like, oh, you can do this, you know, right after you get the Pokeflute, which only requires that you do the Lavender Tower sequence. So, yeah. What? Also, I think the overall mid-game of this game is actually pretty good, all things considered. I don't think you spend that much time in Saffron and Celadon. In fact, I think you spend very little time there, because Saffron mostly exists as a hub to get you between the places you actually want to be. There are not that many attractions in Saffron, aside from the gym, the fighting dojo, and Silphco. Thank you, Big Tesco. So, you know, beyond those 3 locations, you don't want to spend as much time as you can in Saffron at all. You want to really avoid it at all costs. There's not much to do there. I guess there's also Mr. Psychic. Anyway, Celadon has the department store in the game for which gives it more value, but those are more locations that you can use as a resource. You don't dwell in there most of the time. The region is about exploration. The hub locations exist as a way to get you resources to facilitate the exploration. You're not meant to stay in there, and they don't force you to either. Alright, I guess we go. Whose idea was it to make the world so fucking hot right now? I'm gonna go grab some water.
about how Pokemon's difficulty is based primarily on endurance. Seriously, the next time you play a Kanto game, go through this route and fight every trainer without going back to heal at the center. It's an amazing experience. Arriving in Fuchsia City, Butterfree steamrolled through Koga's team with only one minor hiccup requiring a switch out from Pidgeotto. I'm quite happy about that. Butterfree's actually been carrying the entire team since I stopped off in Saffron for Psychic, and I'm feeling very vindicated by this. See, I was watching old PokeTuber videos because that's something I occasionally end up doing, and a common theme for Butterfree in Gen 1 is that she's good in the early game and not very good anywhere else. And like I said, I had a bone to pick about that, so I resolved to keep Butterfree on my party and sweep the game, and so Butterfree turning out to be my best Pokemon is very vindicating. I snagged the items I needed from the Safari Zone without much care, because I actually don't like the Safari Zone all that much. It was interesting for the rare Pokemon you could find there, but I've already got my team in mind, and
So I actually want to give a bit of an explanation for the phenomenon that is being experienced here, because it's not just Butterfree is secretly the GOAT. Butterfree is better than I think a lot of people give it credit for. Jagan moment, indeed. But the real facet that Lily is experiencing here is, I guess, not effort values, but stat experience. That's what it's called in old gens. So basically how it works in newer gens is that every time you defeat a Pokemon based on its species, you get a set number of points called effort values, which permanently give you stat increases for that Pokemon, making it stronger than others of its species that do not have effort values. In older generations, this is also true. It is called stat experience and has different number scaling. But importantly, these numbers, unlike in later generations, can be maxed out for every single stat, not just for 2. There's a set number of points. It ends up being that you can max out 2 stats and get like 4 spare points for 1 stat, which amounts to like exactly 1 stat point. Anyway, not super important. Point is, the reason why this Butterfree is overperforming is in part because Butterfree is probably better than some people give it credit for, because it's easy to show in the early game of flying type. But also because of the fact that Lily has used it throughout the majority of her playthrough, Butterfree has so much stat experience that it is much bulkier and faster and stronger than all of the enemy Pokemon you'd expect it to normally lose to. In addition to the fact that poison types are pretty common in Kanto, this means that she's stronger than she should be. This is not necessarily to say this is not a valid way to play the game, but it is a contributing factor, and I wonder if she's going to acknowledge it. If she doesn't, that's going to be a skill issue for me. But if she does, then, hey, kudos to at least acknowledging why people are saying these things and why you found an atypical experience.
I have no need for anything in there, and not being able to battle them just makes the whole ordeal annoying. This was the area I was least looking forward to, so we're moving on to... Damn it, that's even worse. There's a problem in Saffron City in that most of the city is on lockdown until you clear out Team Rocket from Silphco. And I'll be honest, I think Silphco is the worst area in the entire series. It is a labyrinthine dungeon.
Okay, not the worst in the series, but it's not good.
Extremely awkward teleporters to zip from room to room until you find the card key, and it's an intense maze of locked doors, teleporters, and just the worst kind of rocket fights in the entire damn series. And I am including Gen 2's radio tower in that. Oh my fucking god!
Gen 2 radio tower is so much less bad. What?
Cheated and looked at the map like I did because fuck this dungeon. It's not long, but if you
Thanks,
don't, like most people don't, oh my god, this is arduous. You're lost in this maze, having your resources chipped away on more and more fights, and there's a fight with Sketchy right before Giovanni.
There's
this
free
dungeon
healing?
and Pokemon Tower
There's a
both
free
have
healing
spaces
bit.
to heal mid-dungeon. No other area in the game has that. I think that's the point you can say the dungeon is too big. And I'd be fine with how big it was if it wasn't so dull, if there was a clear forward progression, but this can be the shortest place in the game if you know which teleporter actually gets you to where you want to go. It's this one. See, I actually quite liked Rock Tunnel. No one trainer battle is going to really challenge you outside of the boss fights, but instead you're draining PP, losing health, running out of healing items, and there's no restoration or mart until you reach the next town. Rock Tunnel actually has a Pokemon Center right outside because it is a gauntlet, something Gen 2 did as well with Union Cave. And as you get through, there's more and more trainers in your way, dwindling your resources. But because Rock Tunnel is mostly linear, you're always making forward progress. And while losing can restore your health and PP, it costs half your money to do it. This, incidentally, is why you can't buy PP restoring items. It's why
Wait. Hold on, what?
Your resources. But because Rock Tunnel is mostly linear, you're always making forward progress. And while losing can restore your health and PP, it costs half your money to do it. This
So there's this cool item called an escape rope. They don't cost half your money. And they bring you back to the entrance so you can heal. I do think, like, a sort of look at how Gauntlet difficulty works in early gens is, like, an interesting criticism of its difficulty, because I guess there is something to be said for PP management and HP management. I mean, skill issue, just don't get encounters. So there's a cool item called the Repel. Yeah. How, these trainers, gauntlets of trainers as you go form a kind of difficulty. But in a lot of ways, I don't know how engaging that is. I think there are the joy of a dungeon in Pokemon, for me at least, does not come from engaging difficulty of fighting difficult trainers and making my way through. Because most of the time the trainers aren't going to be hard. And there's just going to be a lot of them and they kind of waste my time. The joy of navigating a dungeon in Pokemon is finding hidden items and exploring new pathways. The reason why dungeons exist in RPGs instead of just a linear hallway to get to the boss is so that the game can provide you with alternate pathways with which to give you cool shit. Like special equipment that you might want later. Rare items. When you find a hidden pathway and you get an elixir in a JRPG, it's like, oh shit, this is an incredibly powerful healing item that I would not have gotten if I had just stuck on the beaten path. I am incentivized to now explore to find more cool shit like this. But the way that this is being presented is that the fun of these caves is not about searching every nook and cranny. It's about simply trying to get to the end goal. And I do respect that there is a kind of old school JRPG fun to that. But I think in Pokemon specifically, it's just not very engaging. Oh yeah, Reversal Mountain for sure has some, like, actually somewhat difficult doubles. Crazy. But anyways, I would say that there is a kind of difficulty for some people, but I don't think that repeal is universal, and I don't think in the case of Pokemon, it's particularly good game design, because there's very little penalty for just going back to the Pokemon Center and healing up. Especially if you are smart enough to buy repels. You're only wasting a little bit of time to re-navigate. Yeah. That's what, rant over. Back to your scheduled Pokemon.
This, incidentally, is why you can't buy PP restoring items. It's why PP exists at all. This game is very unforgiving to your PP. Lily, knock it off. This is actually a really good approach to gameplay. Most trainers don't have more than 1 or 2 Pokemon, but you're not just up against one trainer, you're up against all of this.
Did you just use Body Slam on a Geodude?
Tunnel. It's got a layout designed to confuse you, and it's right in the middle of a city, so nothing is stopping you from taking the elevators to the lobby and going to the Pokemon Center and healing up. It's just the worst dungeon in the entire game. I fucking despise it. People complained about Rock Tunnel because you needed to use Flash or wander around blindly, and we'll get into HMs in a little bit because I actually like them, but it's actually very well designed, a very meaty challenge for where it is in the game, and very satisfying to get through, especially since it's a transitory period of the second act of the game. There's no cheating through it. You have to go through it in this one direction, which means this one direction is very interesting. Oh fuck, that was another H-bomb quote, wasn't it? Silph is just obtuse for the sake of obtuse, and can be effectively skipped over if you're crafty enough. So it's either unbearably grueling or terminally short and easy with no middle ground. And the gym afterward also features a teleporter pad puzzle that, again, you either try every pad and get lucky, or know exactly where to go. It's no surprise they didn't do this kind of gym puzzle a second time. Now this is the part where I'm supposed to talk about how powerful the psychic type is and how broken and overwhelming it is. Everyone talks about it.
Wait. Did she just say it's no surprise they didn't do this type of gym puzzle a second time? Lily, this is a whole series retrospective. They do this exact kind of puzzle in Gen 6. Laver City has the... has the exact same puzzle. It's aesthetically a lot better, but also there's the fact that it's 5 generations later and they had a lot more time to work put into making interesting assets for a game. It is still a blind teleporter puzzle. This is not the last time the series has done this. We're moving on.
Powerful the psychic types are. Here's the thing though, that's only true in theory. Psychic's power comes from a large variety of stab moves and its 2 weaknesses either not being coded properly or possessing no moves of decent power. Sure, but one thing we're going to run into later is that the Pokemon community operates as if stab super effective moves are the only things that exist. You remember how I mentioned
No!
to pick
What?
YouTubers? Well, here it is. This is why Butterfree is often derided as a low-tier Pokemon.
No!
Because she doesn't learn stab moves. But the thing is, other strategies exist. Butterfree might not have stab moves, but
What
she
are
has
you
an array of
talking
status
about?
moves. Sleep is godlike in this game, and she's one of the earliest sleepers. And you don't need stab to do some pretty meaty damage either way. Neutral attacks are still a thing.
Who's gonna draft
Status
league
moves
match?
are still a thing. Alakazam might have high special, but his physical defense is in the toilet. And a decent physical move, even if it isn't super effective, is going to body the fucker. These Pokemon are overpowered if you're someone who thinks having no weaknesses means you can't be killed. But
Okay,
that's never
okay, you know what? We're going to the calc. Alright. We're going to RBY. And I'm pulling up Alakazam. Okay. Of these 4 moves that the standard Alakazam set in OU has, please inform me how many are stab moves. If your answer was 1, you'd be right. It is not a variety of stab moves. The reason why Alakazam is good is largely because of these 2 numbers, yes. In combination with this number, that's a pretty good number. And ooh, that's a nice word. But it's also because of this word, recover. Sure, it has pretty poor physical bulk, but that's also its special bulk. It's pretty bulky, and also incredibly fucking fast, and can make you not fast with Thunder Wave. Does Butterfree have a set? It does. Okay. So what does Butterfree have in comparison? Well, it does have Sleep Powder, which, as mentioned in Gen 1, is really good. Inaccurate sleep moves are run all the time in Gen 1 because there's not much in the way of better options. Most sleepers are inaccurate. Also, you cannot see this. Hee whoopsie doodle. Let me just, boop, boop, boop. Alright. Okay, you still can't see that. Whatever. Let's just do this instead. Okay, so Butterfree, right? Butterfree, notably, does have some good useful utility moves. Does have Psychic, although not Stabs was a lot weaker. But notably, the main difference is these numbers are way the fuck smaller. Butterfree has far less damage and is way slower. Yeah, it can put on a lot of debilitating statuses. That's why it's, PU and not, 6U or whatever. But it doesn't have power, and it has no better bulk than Alakazam. That's why people are saying it's bad. It's not a matter of stab moves. Coverage moves are used all the fucking time. Tauros runs 2 coverage moves, and that's why it's good, because it can hit rock types with a Blizzard, and other rock types with Earthquake, or more accurately, Gengar. It's so hard to check Tauros because it has moves that aren't normal type that shore up its small weaknesses. That's why Gen 1 Tauros is good. Snorlax runs Ice Beam sometimes. It runs Earthquake. Chansey can run T-Bolt and Ice Beam. Runs Thunder Wave. This is completely overlooking why Pokemon are as good as they are in Generation 1. Yeah, the stats matter significantly. That number is bullshit. But to suggest that these Pokemon are the metagame defining threats that they are in Generation 1 because of the numbers and stab moves is very wrong. Anyways.
never been the case. We all beat Sabrina as kids after all, and chances are you beat the kid who had Mewtwo. In fact, despite how supposedly powerful psychic types are, Sabrina has never been memed on as heavily as Whitney or Cynthia have been in the past. And shit, Cynthia's Garchomp has a 4x weakness and is still considered brutally difficult even though she has a Pokemon with no weaknesses. The truth of the matter is that Alakazam just doesn't have the moves available to him to really take out his real weaknesses, physical attackers. To be as broken as people claim Alakazam is, he would need a much wider variety of moves, and he's just never really had that. But Gen 1 Psychic types just weren't that broken to begin with.
Oh,
Just
okay,
use
okay.
Slash.
Never had a variety of moves, huh? Never had a variety of moves. Never had a variety of moves. Never had a variety. You know what? We'll just use a specific gen instead of Nat Dex. Sure. What if we go, I don't know, Gen 3? That's pretty early. Never had a variety of moves, huh? No fire coverage. No Calm Mind setup. No Encore to lock opponents in. No Ice Punch coverage. No Thunder Punch coverage. Trick. Thunder Wave. Taunt. Substitute. Reflect. Light Screen. Knockoff utility. No, it just wants to run Psychic, huh? Oh, this crop is really bad for this. Okay, whatever. We're going back.
Like ever. Technically, the next area is Seafoam Islands, but let's be honest, when was the last time you actually went through Seafoam Islands? Yeah, I thought so. I certainly didn't. I surfed south from Palatown, you fucking scrub. Out of all the gyms, I think Blaine is my favorite. Fire-type Pokemon are rare in damn near every Pokemon game, so a Fire-type gym is always a welcome challenge. But his trivia questions were something I always thought was very cute. It's better than maneuvering around gym trainers like someone who's just dropped a really eggy fart and is trying not to be noticed about it. Oh, right, but first you have to go through the Pokemon Mansion. You know, I forget about this dungeon every single time I play this game, and then I just spam repels and try not to battle anyone. I feel Pokemon Mansion should be the coolest dungeon, but it's in a city and so suffers from similar issues that Silphco does. The access to a Pokemon Center nearby renders the things that make the dungeons interesting.
I'm not gonna rebut it. I've been over this.
Swing back to Viridian, give Giovanni a midlife crisis, then head out for the Pokemon. Actually, hang on. I actually really like Giovanni. He's a much more real villain than any other evil team. He just wants to exploit Pokemon for financial gain. He could just as easily be the Mafia or Amazon. But what I really like is that after the third time you beat him, he just goes, I had my entire empire toppled by a small child. What the fuck is wrong with me? What am I doing with my life? I am a failure of the highest order. And he just quits and goes into hiding and hangs out in a cave for the rest of his life. You humiliated this guy so badly, he had a midlife crisis. And in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, you could beat him again and make him even more depressed. He's actually kind of pathetic. I love torturing the elderly. Anyway, after that, and quite invigorating through Victory Road, my points about Rock Tunnel still stand here. I make it to the Elite Four. Lorelei was probably the most difficult of the bunch, simply because ice types are the major blind spot in my knowledge. I know they're weak to fire, but I don't know anything else about how they work. Butterfree swept both Bruno and Agatha.
What?
To be honest, I didn't think she could do it. Two of them are rock type, and I thought it would at least be a struggle, but it was a massacre. I love this little bug. And then Lance was swept by Starmie. Yeah, the Elite Four wasn't really much to write home about, honestly. It's one of those challenges that was really cool as a kid for the spectacle, but as a gameplay challenge, it hasn't held up. But that's fine. It's an old game, and frankly, I think the first 4 gens are at a good place difficulty-wise. They're just hard enough to keep your brain engaged, and as a kid, some of these challenges can seem insurmountable, but they really push you to figure out simple problems in your head, which is something kids need to be constantly exercising. It's good for them. Moving on to Sketchy, it was a mostly okay fight. Again, the spectacle is what made it matter, but his Alakazam did get off a cheeky little reflect before I knocked him out, buffing his team against physical attacks, which was
reflect works in Gen 1.
In fact, he did knock out more of my Pokemon than I was prepared for. His Executor in particular was a stubborn little bitch. I really wanted to take out his last Pokemon with Butterfree, but alas, it was not meant to be. But Starmie pulled through for me, and it was all good. We're all good. And that's Gen 1. All in all, I think it still holds up. Any ranking of the generations, and I am going to rank them at the end, really ought to have Gen 1 play smack dab in the middle. All the usual obligatory praises about being the trendsetter are one thing, but the real thing that keeps me coming back to it is freedom. Generation 1 is in this weird position with Gen 2 because they're both very free-form games. Starting from Gen 3, but really picking up speed in Gen 4, Pokemon became more linear, more JRPG. Game Freak started to get very pushy. They wanted to start telling you how to play instead of letting you play on your own. The games were more railroaded, more insistent on directing you. Mechanics would be removed for seemingly no reason. Some people claim this started in Gen 6, but it really picked up steam in the DS games. Generation 1 doesn't have this problem. Because the cartridge wouldn't hold enough data, there's no story getting in your way, no pushy attitudes from the devs
So it started in Gen 2, but you don't want to hear that for your argument.
The annoyances in this game mostly just come from roadblocks. I'd forgotten just how padded the mid-game truly is, something I never hear anyone talk about because everyone just focuses on the features, which is what I find is the problem. This is why I wanted to do it this way. I want to focus on the gameplay and not the toys. But even with that hurdle to get over, I still prefer the adventure and the openness. To me, the ideal Pokemon adventure is Ash's Adventure, where you're going on your own personal journey. Maybe you run into a new conflict at a given city, but at the end of the day, it's still your journey to make of it what you will, and that will continue to have value so long as Game Freak continues to try to make Pokemon into Final Fantasy.
Okay.
So moving on to Generation 2. This was a big deal. Game Freak managed to take a game that was already big by Game Boy standards and make it even bigger. More Pokemon, an entirely second region, an update on what had happened since you'd last been there. How did Game Freak manage to pull off something so spectacular?
Hold on. This is a fan remix. Is it cited in the description? No. It is not linked in the description.
I'll tell you how. They got someone else to do it. President of HAL Laboratory Satoru Iwata came in and fixed their Frankenstein's monster of code. Code that was so bad Nintendo's entire team of programmers couldn't decipher it, let alone fix it. But thankfully, someone competent was in the office, and so we got to experience the best pair of Game Boy games to ever exist. Or are they? Let's dive right in. Right from the start, the forced tutorials are slowly creeping their ways in, because when you tell your mother you already know what the Pokegear is, she just explains it to you anyway, but in a way that suggests she's asking you to show her how to use it. She's sneaky, that mother of mine. Anyway, I chose Chikorita because it's correct. Bulky Pokemon do really well in these early games, and Chikorita gets early access to Reflect and Synthesis,
what are you talking
two very
about?
potent moves. Reflect especially because 3 out of 5 grass weaknesses are physical, and so Reflect neutralizes their damage. Couple that with Meganium's naturally high defensive stats, and you have a good all-rounder Pokemon. The introduction for Generation 2 is a lot longer than Generation 1 was. Not only do you have to walk farther, but there's just more dialogue overall. We talk about Pokemon games becoming handholdy as if it was some major shift, but as you're going to see, each game slowly becomes more and more directed and structured. After all that, I fight my rival, go back to name him. Now, I think Silver is one of the less interesting rivals. He's just an edgy, sore loser who slags off everyone around him and talks about how great and strong and special he is, all the while getting bodied every time you see him. He reminds me too much of Hop, just with a worse attitude. He's a loser and an edgelord. Actually, since I'm here, when you first beat your rival, he says, "My name's question mark, question mark, question mark." And I want to know, when you first played this game, did you name him question mark, question mark, question mark? I mean, technically that's his name. It's a weird fucking name, but it is his name. In the remakes, they changed that to you seeing his trainer card and not specifying his name, but here, your parents never even gave you a chance, did they? No matter, I'll correct that mistake. I'll give him a name that suits the pathetic loser he truly is. So I named him Kyle Ron. On Route 29, I snagged a Caterpie, which would also become a front-runner of my team, like the last time. And in fact, I set the challenge for myself that I was going to
like
beat
it.
with
I want to like the
only a
video.
Butterfree. I also snagged a Geodude because I feel like having a rocky girl on my team. I never used Geodude before. This might be fun. The first thing I did in Violet City was head right to Sprout Tower. It's the first major dungeon, and it's actually a pretty good one. Like with Rock Tunnel, it's a fixed linear path to your destination with plenty of trainers and wild Pokemon, so it's an endurance test rather than a puzzle dungeon. But like the Rocket Hideout in Silphco, it's located in a city, which means you can always double back to the Pokemon Center. This is something they keep doing, and I wish they would stop. Actually, compared to Sprout Tower, Violet's gym is kind of a pushover. I mean, most of my Pokemon were injured and fainted, but I didn't lose. Chikorita and Metapod handled most of them until Geodude came out to finish off Pidgeotto. First badge
it turns
acquired,
out the rock
and
type's
Metapod
good
evolved.
into the flying
And now I have a
type.
murder bug.
Who I will feed the souls of my victims.
Heading out to Union Cave, Butterfree's bloodlust proved unquenchable as she slaughtered every last Pokemon and trainer who got in my way. Geodude, on the other hand, she wasn't having as good of a time, but I needed to level her up because the next gym was a bug gym, and bugs don't like rocks. I would know, I tested this theory very thoroughly as a child. This is where the railroading gets a little ridiculous. The process for Azalea Town is talk to Kurt, clear out the well, beat the gym, do the Farfetch quest, then move on. And they really want you to do it in that order. They not only put a rock in front blocking the way to the gym, but also the well until you talk to Kurt,
I didn't know that,
who knocks
actually.
him in and falls in himself.
I didn't
But
read
Kurt's
it.
broken his hip and therefore can't help. It's almost like diving headfirst into a well isn't a smart decision, but that's just my opinion. And so I have to clear it out instead. The Rocket Grunts use mostly poison types, so Butterfree and Geodude got this. The Rocket fights in Gen 2 are actually the least interesting part of the game. There's one stretch later that goes on for far too long where it's nothing but Rocket fights over and over again. But this part right here
not
is
that
just
long.
a taste of how dreary
Radio
it
Tower's
is.
not that
Team
long.
Rocket was interesting when it had Giovanni, but seeing them sort of beaten down and looking for their leader is just odd. Team Rocket was a criminal organization. They were exploiting Pokemon for money. If the group fell apart, just join another one. Why are you sticking around looking for Giovanni like he's your dad? See, part of what made Team Rocket fun was that they were a very real villain, but also so pathetic they could be undone by a small child. At the end of the game, Giovanni just breaks down and quits because he knows he'll never recover from the humiliation of being beaten by a little girl 3 times with a frog and a butterfly. Ooh, I have all these cool masculine Pokemon and chirp chirp, motherfucker. But here, they just want Crime Daddy back, and I almost feel bad about kicking them when they're down. Bugsy, on the other hand, can...
Okay, so unfunny jokes aside, sorry, that wasn't very nice of me. I think the state of Team Rocket is a kind of genuine criticism you can have of the games. I think it is a pretty weak aspect, but I do think it makes sense that they still operate without Giovanni. It's not like, you know, if in real life you were to, you know, take out the head of a criminal organization, it wouldn't, you know, restructure itself under new management. And the fact that they're looking for Giovanni might be a bit weirder, but I think it still makes sense in the context of, hey, we did some pretty cool shit while Giovanni was here. We took over Silphco. That's kind of a big deal. So yeah, I guess it does make sense that I think they'd be looking for him to an extent. I think this is a pretty flaccid criticism. Moving on.
Fuck right off. Okay, so both Azalea Town and Goldenrod City have leaders whose main gimmick is using attacks that get progressively stronger after consecutive hits. Now, this kind of fight is basically screaming, use sleeper accuracy moves, because there's no tanking 5 hits from Fury Cutter or Rollout. And it took me just a little longer than I'd like to admit that Scyther was a flying type, and so Mudslap wasn't actually going to work. But then I remembered that means he's 4 times weak to Rock Throw, and I almost realized that just a little bit too late. So between the 2 bad Mudslaps and the missed Rock Throw, he got up to 4 stacks of Fury Cutter. If I hadn't hit that last one, he would have one-shot everyone on my team. This has been a certified Lily Orchard bimbo moment, because I'm 30 and somehow a game for children is getting one over on me. Second badge acquired. Anyway, then you have your first real fight with your rival, and I crushed him with Butterfree, whose bloodlust was sated. For now. And I take back what I said before. Kyle Ron isn't one of the less interesting rivals. He's the worst fucking rival in the entire damn series. I fucking hate this kid. See, in Gen 1, you and your boyfriend have a good dynamic. You playfully slag each other off, but there's affection and competitive spirit there. Gen 2's rival just shows up, rants about his strongman rhetoric, loses to you, and then overcompensates. And he never gets any better unless you go way too far out of your way to find the special events with him, which I never did because I don't care about his redemption arc. He's just this obnoxious burden every time he shows up, and I resent the rest of the fanbase for fixating on him and acting like he was the best rival just because he was broody and emo. That's the only reason you like this guy, because he was emo, and that's what you think good writing is. Silver and Hop are fundamentally the same character, it's just that one of them is...
Silver and Hop are fundamentally the same character. This is an entirely new sentence, I think. Let's unpack how these two characters interact with you throughout their games. Well, for one, Silver starts off the game by stealing his starter from the professor instead of getting it given to him, like you did. He then antagonizes you immediately and gets salty when he loses, like a little piss boy. He proceeds to continually antagonize you as he goes throughout his own quest for power and strength throughout the region, suiting his personal philosophy. And then as the game draws to its conclusion, he eventually is met with the inevitable conclusion that he has been befallen to hubris, has become overconfident, and his philosophy is simply untrue about the importance of strength. And over time, learns to move past that and actually befriend his Pokemon. And this is expressed in not just a written way, but a shown way by his Golbat in the post-game finally evolving into Crobat, a friendship-based evolution. Hop, in contrast, does absolutely none of the things that I listed above. Hop is a trainer who is similarly driven to strength, but it is because he's trying to fill the shoes of his older brother, the one who both gives you and him your starters, and he is gradually, disillusioned on that path, rather than having its power-based belief structure challenged, it is reinforced by your victories over him. He gets an inferiority complex about it because of it, and eventually bows out of combat entirely because he believes that he is simply not capable of winning battles because you are the stronger trainer, and instead changes his passion because of his defeat. This is not to argue that that's cool for Hop. I think that story writing's kind of whack actually, but to suggest that these are the same character, um, is very wrong. I don't understand how you can draw that conclusion at all. That doesn't make any possible sense to me.
Superficially emo and the other isn't. Fuck Silver. Okay, so Goldenrod City is packed to the gills with things to do. It's almost insane. There are a mountain of daily events here, tons of nooks and crannies all over the place. I think there's more stuff in Goldenrod than any other city in any other game. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do any of it because 16 years of being tortured and tormented by World of Warcraft has meant that your daily quests can fuck right off. This is where we brush up against the core philosophy of Gen 2. See, a common complaint about Gen 2 is the level curve. Wild Pokemon and trainers remain at a low level, but there isn't enough XP to keep an entire team even as a result. But the truth of the matter is that there is enough XP, it's just that it's not immediately apparent. You know,
No,
those
there is
trainers
not.
asking for your phone number to rematch and how the game is laid out in such a way that it's easier to backtrack to certain areas? Yeah, there it is. All those areas you missed and didn't come back to later, there it is. See, these games weren't designed to be played by a progression-minded player who's just trying to record for silly internet video. They were designed for a handheld system that you could take anywhere, being used by children who had entire lunch hours, afternoons, and weekends to fuck around and find out. When you were a kid, you didn't have this problem because you went back to check out the rest of Union Cave once you got served, or explored Mount Mortar, or explored the ruins of Elf, or looked around at all those extra areas hidden away wondering what could be down there. As an adult, you already know the progression path and you follow it religiously. And the thing about Japanese open world games is that they don't really lose sleep over whether or not players miss anything. So there's plenty of extra paths to
Why
find,
Japanese?
and the game isn't really all that bothered if you don't. Most of the caves, especially Mount Mortar and Dark
How
Cave,
does that
are
qualify
completely
you?
optional. You know, sometimes I wonder if there's a correlation between this, my generation complaining that the XP curve is fucked, and modern Pokemon games leading you by the throat through every single possible site and being terrified you might miss something. Where was I? Oh, right. So I smashed through Whitney with
Why do
Butterfree,
you
and
hate
Butterfree's thirst for the
Man
blood of the
JTV
living
so
has been
much?
sated. For now. Third badge acquired. But wait, I thought Whitney was super hard and Butterfree has a 4x weakness to fucking sleep powder and flash, guys. This isn't rocket science. In Ecruteak City, you can't actually go to
Why are you so proud of using stall strats on Whitney? Like, don't get me wrong. You beat a fight that is somewhat notoriously difficult. But I don't think anyone was like... Is this a huge point of pride for you? That you stalled out Whitney's Miltank by getting lucky with sleep and evasion? Is that where we're at? Is that where we're at? I'm very confused about the almost vindictive nature of essentially cheesing fights to prove a point, right? Like, I don't know how much fun you genuinely would have by putting Whitney's Miltank to sleep, notably getting lucky to do so because sleep powder is not accurate, and then using Flash with enough sleep turns to get it down to low accuracy where it's remotely consistent, to keep it asleep, and then keep dodging rollouts. I don't see the fun in that. I mean, so not that much, honestly. It's not been very interestingly bad. Just kind of like milk toast, not very good. The basic gist of recent criticism is that she basically beat Whitney's Miltank using Butterfree with Sleep Powder and Flash. And I'm just like, is that a point of pride? Is that a cool strat? I'm not sure what the commentary is here. Is with enough asterisks Butterfree can beat this difficult fight? Is that what you're going for? I don't know. I feel like I feel like this isn't a good point. We're gonna move on.
To the gym without doing the side quest first. You know, just like Azalea Town. Like, fucking half the gyms in this game have some side quest you have to do before you get the badge. Good lord. The side quest this time is to go through the burn tower where I found Kyle Ron, who is looking for a legendary Pokemon, but decides to take it out on you when he can't find one. Dude, come on, take a chill pill. Anyway, of course you crush him because he's a wuss, and then you fall down a pit. Worse even, he mocks you for it, but the Pokemon he was looking for was right down here. Kyle, quit being a little bitch, your dogs are down here. Anyway, now that the dogs are gone, the gym leader will finally go back to his post and do his fucking job like he was supposed to. Great concept, huh? Anyway, I opened battle with Togepi. That was a false start. I switched to Butterfree and mowed through his first few Pokemon because some world-class intellectic Game Freak decided to make most of the ghost types weak to Psychic, and most of them have the move that cuts their health in half at the start anyway. Good job, Morty. It's even better because you don't take damage from Curse on the turn you knock the opponent out, so I got 2 free nukes on them without taking a scratch. And Curse is a volatile status effect, which means it's removed if you switch out. It sure would suck if I switched out into a normal type who was immune to Shadow Ball, wouldn't it? Fucking ghost types, I swear. Gengar's main strategy is to use Hypnosis and then Dream Eater. He will always use Dream Eater if the opponent is asleep, meaning you can switch out to a Pokemon that isn't to make it fail. And with Hypnosis having a less than perfect accuracy, you can effectively dance into a miss as much as you like. This actually makes Gengar something of a pushover. An even better approach is to use a normal type that's paralyzed, meaning they can't be put to sleep and can't be damaged by any other move, making Gengar a sitting duck. This is what I love about Gen 2. You can just bend the game over your knee and beat it until it cries. 4th badge acquired.
This is true of every single game in the series. Every single game in the series can be bent over your knee if you learn how the game works. That's called being skilled or having game knowledge. Obviously, there is some amount of skill involved in, looking at the set on Morgi's Gengar and recognizing that it can only hurt you if you are 1, not normal type, and 2, asleep. So, the simple solution is to just grab a normal type, right? And of which the game gives you free ones in Togepi and many others throughout the way, right? But reasonably speaking, I don't know why this was a big part of a retrospective. This feels like an edited down Let's Play, right? Like, this feels like you played through the game and edited it down into a half-hour video and then kind of give commentary across that as you go, talking about your thoughts on that particular portion of the game. And that's not an awful way to go through it, but it does mean that you kind of lack a lot of the sweeping criticism of larger game design decisions. I know that all of them are programmatic. Every single one. Every single game's AI can be broken over your heel if you know what you're doing. It's Nuzlockers have mastered this, right? Like, there are extensive documents dedicated to talking about, how the AI works in certain games, how priority systems work, if the AI will go for fast, etc., etc. Run and Bun obviously has custom AI, so that's how you know a lot of what it's going to do. But in the context of mainline games, there is still a lot of data mining that's been done to understand the workings there. And it is a consistently exploitable thing. So I just don't see how this is a compelling thing to bring up in an attempt to be a critique of the series. Being able to break a game for kids over your knee in your 20s, I don't even know how old the Lay Orchard is. They might be in their late teens or whatever. Or maybe they're 30, I don't know. But, being able to recognize a win condition is not necessarily a criticism of the game, positive or negative. It is simply a facet of a complex battle system. I don't know. I just find it interesting that was brought up at all. It's just not like a huge criticism. I feel like it didn't need to exist as a comment.
Coming into Olivine, we have Another fucking side quest. Jasmine is up at the lighthouse taking care of a sick Ampharos, and I need to go across the ocean to get the medicine because apparently Olivine City doesn't have a single runner or ferry going to an island-locked town just 10 minutes across the sea, despite the fact that it's Johto's main harbor with a ship going to fucking Kanto. Fine, whatever. Sail across the ocean, pick up your damn medicine. Hey, I might as well get the badge while I'm... Oh, stupid me. You need strength in this gym, and I didn't get it. This is what I mean. The HMs are all just lying in random places in cities, except for Waterfall, which you just find randomly in Ice Path. They really wanted you to explore. You get to a new town, and they're like, crawl over every single building. And you know what? I didn't. And now I have to do the fucking walk of shame all the way back to Olivine. Whatever, I got it, and now we're back properly this time. Most of Chuck's Pokemon are fighting type, which means Butterfree gets to sweep again. Oh, that's not good. It's alright, Togepi's got it, and Primeape is down. I sent out Bayleaf against Poliwrath, but I kept getting stuck in a loop of sleep, Mind Reader, and sleep again. Wake up, you damn plant dog! Switching out wasn't good either because Poliwrath was faster and would just keep doing the loop of Mind Reader and Hypnosis. In better games, you can loop AI to your advantage. Here it just fucks you over, and he keeps using Hypnosis. Whatever, I decided to take the coward's way out, and that was to keep healing until he ran out of power points. By some miracle, bringing out Bayleaf again got him to miss twice with Hypnosis.
In better games, the AI is more exploitable to my advantage? Is that the point you're trying to make here? I'm just confused at this point. What are you trying to say? What is the overarching critique?
Nice! But then he hit me with the third one. Aww. But eventually I won the stalling war because Bayleaf is bulky as shit, and definitely not because I had him hooked up to an IV full of potions. 5th badge acquired. So I got the medicine to Amphi and convinced Jasmine to do her job, and so we're right back into another gym battle. This is where the game falls apart a bit. You see, once you finish Ecruteak City, you have the choice of where to go next. You can do the Olivine, Cianwood, and Mahogany Town storylines and their respective gyms in any order you want. But you have to do all of them. Because you can do them in any order, they're all relatively the same power-wise. This is that infamous level curve people talk about, because once you reach this point, progression just sort of stops. Wild Pokemon remain around level 15, trainers have around level 20, and the gym leaders have Pokemon in their 30s for 3 gyms until you have 7 badges. Outside of Red, very few battles in this game feature Pokemon higher than level 50. As I mentioned earlier, most of the XP is found in the daily and weekly events and the trainer rematches, but the entire system is extremely inelegant, and it means you have to wait until the next day to actually do anything. This means you don't have to do much grinding for a full team, but it also means that if you're not doing those daily events, you're going to fall behind very quickly because wild Pokemon just flat out aren't very high level. And if you're only using your starter for everything, you're going to be criminally over level. With all 3 gyms all having the same level range, that gulf is only going to get bigger and bigger. You're either overpowered, stuck grinding, or stuck waiting. All of this is only compounded by the availability of Pokemon. More than half the Johto dex isn't available outside of the post-game, either being locked to Kanto, items you get from Kanto, or areas you can't access until you've cleared Kanto. I know Tamahiro recently put out a video defending this decision as it made some Pokemon rare and desirable through their scarcity, but here's a big problem with that. Johto's actually good Pokemon not being available until well into the post-game turns them into trophies rather than actual Pokemon.
I don't know if one of
Once
those
you
is
get
a complaint or not. I don't know why this is said at all.
To do. Once you get a Houndour, you're 95%
Anyway,
of the
these
way
are like
through the
actual
post-game
good
with only
criticisms
red in
that
your way.
were solved
Same
in
with
Crystal
Larvitar.
Legacy.
So
We're gonna.
many actually good
I don't have
Pokemon
anything to
that's
say.
stuck
This
in a part of the game
good.
where once you get them, there is
I
nothing
agree.
left to actually
Houndour
do with
should
them
be
other than
available.
erase them by starting a new
Mischievous
game.
should be
This might
available.
sound fine for trophy hunters out there, but if you're someone for whom, say, Houndoom is your favorite Pokemon, this is actually garbage design. Sure, it might make Houndoom more special and exclusive and give it more value to make it so rare, but is that fun? No, it's not. And value can fuck off if it makes the game less fun. This is why only pathetic sacks of shit think shiny Pokemon have any actual value. They're such a pain in the ass to get that most people just won't bother, and not bothering is the smart decision. Value is entirely subjective, and while you might need scarcity to make Tyranitar more valuable, people for whom Tyranitar is their favorite Pokemon aren't so capitalist in mindset, and artificially depriving them
what
of
does
their favorite
capitalism
Pokemon
have to do
is
with
actually
this?
the worst decision a Pokemon game could ever make. I know I would hate it if a Pokemon game withheld Gardevoir from me until the post-game, and several of them have done just that. When you have a game series like this where the actual value of individual Pokemon...
No. Okay, you've lost me. You had me, and you lost me. So, yes, Johto locking brand new Johto Pokemon made for Johto in the Johto Pokedex to the post game is a bad decision that ultimately means that these cool new Pokemon did not get their chance in the spotlight. Locking Gardevoir to the post game in Black and White is not remotely the same thing. Gardevoir is a Pokemon that at the time was 2 generations old, right? This Pokemon has been around the block. It had its time in the sunshine, and it will have its time in the sunshine again, especially in Gen 6, where it is the champion's signature guy, right? So when we talk about, Gardevoir being launched post-game, it means that they had a specific regional Pokedex they wanted to present the player with in Generation 5, consisting, in specifically Black and White, of their new Pokemon. Meaning that of the new Pokemon you had to experience all of them before the post-game. Is this universally true and successful in Gen 5? Not necessarily. There are some Pokemon that suffer a lot from this, specifically Hydreigon, Braviary, Mandibuzz, Mienshao, Bisharp, all these Pokemon with incredibly bad, I'll get to the comment in a second, but yes, these Pokemon do suffer because of it. But Gardevoir not being there is because they had a curated regional dex for the game. Gardevoir is not the feature subject of the game. They're not drawing you in with lures and promises of Gardevoir. They're not saying, oh yes, come to my Unova region. We have Arcanine here. No, they're not saying that. They're saying, hey, we have a region. We have a bunch of new Pokemon in this region. Come for the new Pokemon. And once you've beaten the game, you can bring in whoever you want. Do the post-game content, which we do have, with those new Pokemon, right? You can bring in your old favorites back. We can have that. Of course, when we get to later gens, there's a conversation to be had about Dexit and how that fits into that. But in that context, I think it's perfectly okay to lock a Pokemon that is a legacy Pokemon to the post-game. The problem in Johto is that these Pokemon are new. They are the attraction. They're the selling point, and you're arbitrarily locking them away from the player. I think the commodification of Pokemon is not necessarily a bad thing. I think having rare Pokemon is good. The fact that Bagon is such a rare encounter in an early route in Gen 7 is incredible design. Because if you want to find this rare, powerful Pokemon that breaks the early game, because of Dragon Rage, you can find Bagon. It's super early. But that requires work. That requires searching, knowing it's there, or hunting it out, And that makes it more valuable and interesting. This is not a case of commodification. It is a strategic placement of a game resource. If Larvitar was a, 30% encounter on Route 1, everyone would have a Tyranitar. Having it be rare makes it, oh, this is a cool, rare Pokemon. Having it be completely inaccessible means that you don't have any association with it at all, which is bad. Okay. And no, this is not capitalism. You don't have to pay extra to not paywalling it. And besides, especially with the advent of the GTS, everyone can get it. There is no, these Pokemon are not gated behind any kind of artificial scarcity or rarity. If you have a copy of the game, you can get this Pokemon. Virgin exclusives are an actual example of how capitalism is hurting the series and its distribution of Pokemon accessibility. But we're not ready for that conversation yet. That's not a conversation we're having. Jesus Christ. Okay.
Pokemon is so subjective, artificially withholding many of those Pokemon is just punishing the people who dare to actually like them. Just for comparison, there is a series of ROM hacks made by Drayano that increase the difficulty of the Pokemon games, but also make every Pokemon available. And just looking at a single route, there's such a huge variety of Pokemon in each area. Look at how many Pokemon around Route 30 in Sacred Gold alone. There is no universe where this isn't better. Having all that variety, being able
There is a universe where that isn't better, Lily.
It's the one you're living in. If every route in Scarlet and Violet had enough diversity to fit all 1,025 Pokemon, in its base game, I'm not including the DLC here, right? Because I think the DLC is bad. I want to use that in my argument. In the base game, we're going to have like dozens of species in a single route, which ultimately is going to hurt immersion because it means that there's a way more diverse ecology than you expect, but also is going to make the individual Pokemon harder to find, and furthermore, clutter the game up. I don't necessarily want a game where all 1,000 Pokemon are available before I even get to, I don't know, Gym 5, like in a Dryono hack. I think in the context of a Dryono hack, it works very well, because the game is specifically rebalanced around these Pokemon having the similar levels of viability. In specifically Dryono hacks, a lot of underwhelming Pokemon are revamped to be stronger and competitively viable. Here they're not, and that means that if I am given a rare, powerful Pokemon early on, with no context given to its rarity, then we have to look at that side by side with the strong one and go, well, why am I ever choosing this? Just because it's my favorite? You gotta give players a reason to want this Pokemon, and if they're all available so readily, that's a bit of a problem. I know for a fact that this review is going to complain about Dexit when it gets to Gen 8, just because of the way the video seems to be going out. Seems very unlikely that it won't say something along the lines of, why did Dexit happen? Yeah, exactly. It's a good vision for specifically the context of a Dryono hack, but it is not an upgrade, it is a parallel thing that exists well in that context. It was a good decision by Dryono. It is not a universally applicable boon for the whole series. We're moving on.
Able to make a
I'm taking
unique
2
and
drinks.
varied
This
team
lasted a
every
while.
game will always be better than whatever the fuck Gen 2 is doing. Gen 2 is needlessly restrictive in this regard. You just get so few Pokemon to work with, and with how flat the level curve is, it
Why are
just
you using
feels
Psychic on a Starmie?
bad. So many times playing through this, I found myself wanting to add a Pokemon to my team, only to look it up and realize that I could only get it in Kanto, or with an item I get in Kanto. I wanted to get an Octillery because I've never used one before, but I can't because I needed a Super Rod to fish for one, even though it's in Johto. Oh, and it's not even available in Crystal version at all. Thanks, fuckers. Anyway, Olivine, Steel-type Gym. Hello, Graveler. Say hello to Magnemite. Hello, Magnemite. Now say hello to Steelix. Hello,
I love the clear and obvious emulator speed
Oh,
up.
that's not good. It's alright, Bayleaf's got this with Reflectant. You know, sometimes I really don't like you. It's alright, Mantine's got it. Good job, Mantine. 6th badge acquired. Getting into Mahogany Town, there's a problem. The gym is blocked off until you complete the underground rocket dungeon, which first requires defeating the shiny Gyarados at the Lake of Rage. This sets in motion the worst part of the damn game. I hope you like rocket fights, because there's nothing but them for the next 2 hours. You gotta go through the rocket hideout, and then after you get the 7th badge, you have to trek through 3 different dungeons in Goldenrod City filled with samey, boring rocket fights, 2 of which are just the radio tower split into 2 parts.
Yeah, this is why I often do Mahogany first.
Compared to the later games, it's not as egregious. I'd rather go through this than the 70 billion plasma encounters in Gen 5, but it is clear to see where Game Freak is picking up their bad habits. Cards on the table. Some people like the more involved JRPG plots Pokemon has had since Gen 4. People gas up Cyrus and N as the best antagonists the series has ever had, but I fucking hate these two. Pokemon storytelling hasn't gotten better over the years, it's just gotten wordier. It takes more text to do the same thing, and those bad habits start.
What?
So Lance attacks a human being with a fully evolved dragon.
Are we the baddie?
Sure,
And
we'll
we
get
descend
later.
into the rocket hideout.
Actual
One workaround of the alarm
things I
system
can
later,
talk
and we're
about
at the
with
bottom
that.
level.
Oh my
We
God.
need 2 passwords to open the door to the executive's office to get the real password for the generator, and then we destroy the electrode. If I'm breezing through this, it's because it's
Catch
really
them!
not that
They're
interesting.
poor
So the Mahogany
guys!
Gym is themed around ice, and the puzzle is a sliding ice puzzle. Basically, you have to find the one roundabout route that takes you to the gym leader, going through as many trainers as possible, so thanks for that, Game Freak. I mentioned before about the endurance inherent to dungeons, and I feel Mahogany Gym manages to get this vibe down better than most, because it's actually a pain in the ass to get back out and back in again, so going back to the Pokemon Center to heal is at least somewhat discouraged. Anyway, time for Price. His first Pokemon is Seal, which is actually a water type, so eat leaves, and then comes Dugong, another water
Eat
type,
leaves.
so more leaves. Price, you're getting your ass kicked by the type you're supposed to be good against. Step it up, old man. He sends out Piloswine, and I body it with a couple of flamethrowers. No big deal, no Lily Orchard bimbo moments today. 7th badge acquired. Oh, shit. Oh, that means I have to. So Team Rocket is broadcasting a message on public radio demanding that Giovanni come back. Come on, baby, it'll be different this time. So I arrived at the Rocket Tower to find that it was infested with Team Rocket. Oh no! And they've taken the boss of the radio tower hostage. Oh no! And hid him in the basement of the mall behind a locked door and a button puzzle. Oh no! Wait, the mall has that? Why? Like, forget Team Rocket. Who the fuck put a button combination puzzle on the loading zone of a mall? Do you hate dock workers that much? What Amazon warehouse bullshit is this? Okay, so once you get the radio manager out, you have to go back through the locked gate to his office to beat up the executive. All of this takes place amidst an hour of tedious battles with the same grunts who all have the same Pokemon.
Damn,
and
that
fucking
sucks.
kill me now. Team Rocket was fun in the last game, but as I mentioned before,
Yeah.
they're so pathetic and
So,
sad.
even
and
if I'm not
going
gonna
to
use the Electrode, I always catch the Electrode. It's like,
and the fact
poor
that every
babies.
fight is a dull slog only makes fighting them worse. I don't just feel bad for them, I resent them for being so in denial that they're getting in the way of the game. Which, in a sick and twisted way, is pretty dark storytelling. But it's Pokemon. I don't want to beat up people who are clearly depressed. This is the same problem World of Warcraft had recently. I don't want to beat up someone who doesn't deserve it. Anyway, in return for all that,
World
you're
of
given
Warcraft's cringe.
the Clear Bell. An item that lets
That's
you
not a real
encounter
criticism.
Suicune in Tin
I know.
Tower. Could I have a real reward, please? Okay, so there's one more thing to do before I get the last badge that's unique to Crystal. You need to go to Tim Tower and have a scripted encounter with the Box Legendary. Oh boy, I sure hope they don't overuse this plot point in literally every single game after this. That'd really suck. Oh, but you can't just go through. No, that would be simple. Instead, you need to battle the 3 sages before they will let you through. Anyway, I crushed them and shattered their faith and went on to the dogs. 2 of them ran away and
why are you
Suicune challenged
complaining
me.
about that?
And I killed it because Legos are boring. No, really, I don't think I've actually caught a non-mandatory legendary in a long time. You see, however you pronounce it, gamers at me about how great and special Suicune is, and now we can go. Between Mahogany Town and Blackthorn
Why
City
didn't
is
you
Ice
catch
Path,
it?
a dungeon filled with movement puzzles. I actually think Ice Path is one of the more interesting dungeons, and not just because it has a unique tile set in Crystal, but because the strength and movement puzzles are a lot more interesting than just push boulder onto button. Furthermore, it follows my thing about good dungeon design. Because there's so much movement and puzzle solving, there are virtually no trainers here harassing you and getting in your way, and while
I thought
Pokemon
you liked
encounters don't
trainers.
happen on the ice tiles, this means 100% of your focus is spent on navigating the terrain. It really does feel like a dangerous cave you need to be careful in. Making it to Blackthorn City, I made a beeline straight for the gym. Blackthorn uses dragon types, of which there are only about 4 in the game: Dratini, Dragonair, Dragonite, and Kingdra. They're also
About
supplemented with
4.
Horsey
It's
and
4.
Seadra
No
as well.
about.
As you can see, not many Gen 2 Pokemon. This is a complaint of Gen 2 as a whole, in that half the new roster has to take a back seat, especially where gyms are concerned. The fight with Claire starts with Dragonair, but she paralyzes Butterfree and then gets in a crit slam. What the hell? Fine, Golem's got this. Don't worry, Butterfree, I still love you. But then she pulls out a second Dragonair who freezes my Golem. You're just being mean at this point. So I brought out Mantine, and looking at his moveset, can you guess which move I decided to use against the Dragon-type Pokemon? That's right, it was Surf. It's alright, I won anyway, no harm done. And then there's a third Dragonair. You have 3. Why do you have 3? Fine, Ice Beam this one.
Yes, this is a good criticism. It's very tired, though. Move on. I don't understand why
Whatever,
you'd
Iron
put
Tail,
the
I don't like
emulator
this
speed
gym.
up in your
Claire sends
video.
out
Like,
Kingdra,
it's
who is
not
super
hard to get
bulky
rid
and
of.
gets hooked up to an IV full of hyper potions, which means I lost. I really don't like this gym. Tried it again, made better decisions, and managed to win. But, Claire won't give me the badge because she thinks I'm still not ready for the Pokemon League. She says I have to talk to the Dragon Elders and take a little U quiz they made before she'll give it to me. I really don't like this gym. The Dragon's Den...
Okay, yeah, this is a fair
this
criticism.
music's gonna
This is
be
a fair
the end of
criticism.
The Game Boy speaker really struggles with some tracks, and this... Oh, this is torture. I actually always wondered what would happen if you got any of the questions wrong, but it turns out he just says, huh? Didn't catch that? And makes you answer again, and the only penalty is that the Dratini you get doesn't have extreme speed. Oh no, if only I liked Dragonite and wasn't quite so good at alienating people. You fucking heard me, old man.
Yeah, no, she's
Eventually,
spitting
I
with
gave
that
up
one.
My stubborn insistence on being
Fuck the
hero and
Dragon's
gave
Den
him the
song.
answers he wanted to hear, and then he lectured his granddaughter to give me the badge. 8th badge acquired. Well, that was an ordeal and a half. Crazy thing. This
Also,
time, Victory
what
Road
do
is
you mean
actually a
extreme
road.
speed Dratini
Most
isn't
of
a
the
big
route is an
deal?
overworld area with the only major cave.
What do you mean extreme speed Dratini isn't a big deal?
This winding route through Mount Silver that culminates in a small tunnel with crap. I have to have one more fight with Kyle Ron, who I'm realizing just a little bit too late that I should have named Hunter. I bully him and he just doubles down. Whatever, I didn't like you anyway. The Gen 2 Elite Four is slightly different this time around.
Are
we
you-
have Will, Koga, Karen, and the one we don't talk about using Psychic, Poison, Dark, and Fighting. Will's up first.
Are
and
you not gonna
thankfully,
mention
Psychic
the
types still
fact
have the
that-
same fatal flaw in this gen
Are
that
you
they
not
had
going to
in
mention mention that
1
the
of being
Victory
vulnerable
Road
to
is
physical
devoid of
attacks.
trainers
Even
this
better,
time?
Will has 2 Xatu who are weak to
Because
rock,
the text
so
is
Golem's
that
on point
your
here,
rival
but his
beat them
Executor
all?
got off a cheeky little reflect.
You're
you
not gonna
asshole.
mention
But his
that
Pokemon are also
detail?
weak to fire, so
You're
we're
gonna
all good.
ignore
I
it?
caught Slowbro in an Encore trap and then crunched
Okay.
his special defense before blasting him with Razor Leaf. His last Xatu caught me at a really bad string of confusion, but luckily for me, Meganium is bulky as crap. Probably noticing that this time around my Pokemon are a lot more bulky and defensive. This is because Gen 2 is extremely stingy with Pokemon XP and moves, and so high defense is the most reliable strategy to get through painlessly unless you're just spamming Typhlosion. It's also why I kept Togepi and why I got both Chikorita and Geodude. Going into Koga, his Pokemon are mostly Poison and Bug. I thought this would mean I'd need Butterfree and Togetic since they have Psychic moves, but Golem just swept the competition. So now I'm going into
Silenzio Bruno.
namely, Butterfree's on point to humiliate him the same way I did last time, Psychic and Solar Beam. I may have hit a Solar Beam where I meant to Psychic, but it's all good. At least until Machamp got off that cheeky little rock slide. Butterfree will have her vengeance. It's okay, I have an extra. Moving on to Karen, I have a fighting type, so I tried just spamming Submission to come out on top, but sadly the reality of what Submission means meant that wasn't going to work. But it's fine, Togetic and Golem picked up the
So
slack.
many
On to
jokes.
Lance, my second least favorite champion. This
Like,
fight
I
can
guess
either
this
be
is somewhat
really
sense of
hard or
humor. I
really
shouldn't
easy
be
depending
too
on how
harsh
you've
on
played
it.
so far. The thing is that Lance is a Dragon Master, but his Pokemon are more Dragon in vibe than in type. He has 3 Dragonite, who all have different elemental moves for coverage, a Gyarados, an Aerodactyl, and a Charizard. This obviously means you can't ice your way to victory. It doesn't work. Pause for effect. Instead, you have to rock your way to victory because all of his Pokemon are weak to rock type attacks. I'm serious. All of them. And your only threat is Blizzard from 1 Dragonite. Once it's out of the picture, you're in the clear. A little bit anticlimactic now that I think about it. Yeah, so, I'm gonna be honest here, I'm not a fan. While it is ultimately Gen 1, but
So there's a legitimate criticism to be made here, right? Something along the lines of, yeah, actually, monotype trainers tend to be uninteresting when their teams are poorly designed and end up sharing a weakness among the entire squad, such that I can easily sweep them with a Pokemon of a super effective type. But she didn't say that. She like stops just short of the actual criticism that proves her point and shows that she would be leading toward a conclusion. You know, she goes all of the way up to like saying, yeah, Lance has a full team of flying types that are all weak to rock, and so I won easily, and didn't take away the conclusion, and so this fight is poorly designed because it's easily swept. Like, you're right there. You're so close to having a point about Pokemon fight design. You're so close to reaching a good point about why a lot of gym leaders in these games are underwhelming. But you just don't get it. And it's so disappointing. You almost had a good critique there. You almost. I'll be right back. I've had a lot of beverages, and I must use the restroom. Okay, I'm back. Back to pain.
with more stuff, Gen 2 is completely hamstrung by its extremely
Wait, you're not-
stingy offerings of Pokemon.
Are you gonna
All
talk
the
about the
fun
post-game?
Pokemon are locked away in the post-game.
Are you gonna
That's
talk
not
about the
where they
post-game?
should be. They should be here in the main game. That's how the last one worked. That's how every gen works. It makes absolutely no sense to
Are
make
you gonna
100
talk
new
about the
Pokemon and then
post-game?
take all the cool ones and seal them off in the post-game. Follow me on this. In Generation 1, how many Pokemon are in Cerulean Cave that you can't acquire anywhere else in the game? 1. Mewtwo. That's it. That's the only one. Arguably, more Kanto Pokemon should have been locked to Kanto, with more Johto Pokemon being in Johto. In all 3 Gen 2 games, Houndour can only be found on Route 7 in Kanto. That's it. This is a Johto Pokemon. Why isn't he in Johto? This is also the case for Larvitar, Murkrow, and Misdreavus.
I don't-
It wouldn't be
Are you
until
gonna talk
the
at
remakes
all
where
about
this
the
was alleviated
extensive
with Return of the
post-game?
Safari Zone, but in the original games, you get this very stingy amount of Pokemon to play with for
going
arguably
to
no
mention it at
reason other
all?
than making them into trophy mons. This is a problem that no Pokemon game has ever repeated. You can still catch the really cool and interesting Pokemon of each generation before the midpoint of the game. Gen 3 does not arbitrarily withhold Slacking, Breloom, or Gardevoir from you. If you want them, they're right there. This is an objective problem with Generation 2, and it's kind of wholly the problem. The whole appeal of a new gen is getting to play with new Pokemon. Why would you try to stop us from doing that? The appeal of Kanto should be
Wait, now
reacquiring
you're
older
saying the
favorites,
right
not finding
critique.
half the
What?
new Pokemon you've hidden away. The end result is that some Pokemon will never be on someone's team because you just can't get them. This is a problem in every generation, but Gen 2 is the worst offender here, and I think that's significant enough
It's
to
not a
warrant
problem in every
very harsh
generation.
criticism. It is because of that Gen 2 does not even come close to eclipsing its predecessor. It might be the only flaw with the generation, but it is a big one.
It is not
and
the
it's
only
telling
flaw in the
that this was
generation. You
not
talked
something
about
they
this.
would ever repeat.
Oh, that's cute. They changed the sound font.
I'm a kid of the 90s, so I grew up with the very first Pokemon games, but Generation 3 and Hoenn remains to this day my all-time favorite gen. It introduced many of my favorite characters, it has the best written story, it has
Characters?
some of the most beautiful locales
Those
of
are-
any
those are
region,
Pokemon,
especially
they're
as
not
this was
characters.
before the DS brought in the washed-out pastels and jaggy 3D models of Gen 4 and 5. And
Are-
it introduced
I'm
many
sorry.
Pokemon that remain among my favorites to this very day. Generation 3 is something of a
Hey,
controversial
the limited 3D effects in Pokemon Black and White are very charming. Okay, sorry, Yeah, I need to do this to myself. I'm sorry, I had to do the dumb, stupid fucking bit. You criticize the Gen 5 graphics. The limited 3D effects are really charming, okay? I wish I could say I get paid to do this, but I don't. And that's in hindsight, that's probably why.
gen. Some people adore it, some people hate it, and others
Right, man.
correctly identify it as the starting point for many things about Pokemon that have annoyed people in later years. But let's dive in, shall we? This one opens with a more elongated opening sequence where you get out of the truck, fix your clock, and talk to the misogynistic neighbor boy before being able to choose your Pokemon. This shit's getting longer every game, I fucking swear. And this little bitch is really condescending. I'm actually surprised by just how casually sexist he is. What, are you streaming a debate over there, Brendan? Wait, his name is Brendan? Finally, I get to compete against my wife's boyfriend. Man, he'll be pissed to find out they let Christy Golden write his dialogue. Oh wait, that's what he was doing, his Sylvanas live stream. I'll be honest, I actually like Brendan more than Silver.
what
I
the
think
fuck are you
Brendan is
talking
one of my
about?
favorite rivals because while he is casually sexist, he's not trying super hard to be your friend or trying super hard to slag you off. Sure, his sexism does irritate me, but in a good way, where it's all the more fun to beat his Pokemon into the dirt, and he gets salty when he loses later on, which is just great. And it's probably Birch's fault he's like this anyway. I eventually found Professor Birch being savaged by a raccoon, and understandable, those things have rabies, you need to kill him on sight. So to do that, I chose Trico. Because it's correct. And
What
then
the
Birch
fuck
says
are
that
you
I pulled it
talking
off with
about?
Aplomb. Aplomb? Well, that's just charming dialogue. Anyway, he tells me I should go meet my Metamore, and I already have. He's a much nicer guy than Nintendo seems to think he is. Seriously, Poet, you don't deserve this shit you're getting from me. So he challenges me to a fight, and it's no contest because I went and bought 5 potions before the fight because honor means nothing to a corpse. And so Birch gave me a Pokedex and tells me to go fill it, and so far so stand. Come on, Trico, we're going on an adventure. As soon as I catch myself a baby, if you thought I wasn't going to, you don't know me very well. I named her G. Okay, so one problem with the Gen 3 games is that the routes are either really, really long or really, really short. The next town is always either
Not that
5 steps
short.
over or way off in Russia. The older games
What?
had this problem too, but it's a while until you reach the properly long
Wait,
routes.
I thought-
3 badges in, actually. The other games had mountain
I thought you liked the long routes. You complimented a lot of routes that were long. Why do you suddenly not like long roots? Consistency, a crumb of consistency.
Moon, Union Cave, Viridian, and Ilex Forest, all before your third badge. The most Gen 3 has is a bridge. It's a nice bridge, I'll give you that. Anyway, I get to Petalburg and talk to my dad. Hey dad, been a while. As you can see, I changed my entire gender. He gives me this small, sickly boy named Wally and asks me to teach him how to catch Pokemon. I think this might be the most elegant implementation of the catching tutorial. Now you're the more experienced trainer helping the kid. That's very wholesome. I love Wally. Also, he catches a Ralts. The boy has good taste. That is the friend Pokemon. So I took G out for some training, and some world-class intellect decided that Ralts doesn't learn confusion until level 6, so I have to switch train the way there. It's alright, I have a Gecko. Also, those rich kids can fuck off. It's here we meet our first Team Aqua Grunt, who's trying to mug a businessman. And let me tell you, I was conflicted here. I mean, he's a capitalist. I have to let him suffer.
Like,
but I can't progress until I help him. I see what—
I hate, like, this definitely feels like she's just throwing in, like, I hate capitalist gags. Just as like a, haha, I'm a bread tuber. Look at me go. You like H-Bomber Guy? You like Sean? You like ContraPoints? You like Philosophy Tube? You like Big Joel? I also hate capitalism. Look at me go. Like, there's no actual point to these jokes. They're just kind of tacked on. It's not funny, it's not interesting, it's not clever, it's just, I hate capitalism, which, you know, valid. It's just, it's not funny. Delivery's not even good. I'm bullying at this point. I should stop.
What you're about, Nintendo. So the first thing to do in Rustboro is actually run right past Rustboro to the Rusturf Tunnel, where another Aqua Grunt has mugged an old man and fled into an incomplete tunnel. That was a very bad mistake, and I'm about to carve the lesson into his flesh. Except I'm not, because I fucked up the sequence and he wasn't here. So I had to go back and do everything else first. Let's just cut this part out. So Roxanne is a rock-type gym leader. Is there something about rock that makes it an ideal first gym? Fucking 3 games use it. Anyway, the thing is that rock is weak to grass, so— Oh, fuck, I just remembered. Roxanne's a school teacher. This joke was in terrible taste.
Hey, Lance? Hey, it's off. It's off. It's off. It's off. Throw this phone away, Lois.
So anyway, that guy from earlier got
I don't
robbed
get the
again and wants
joke.
me to get his stuff back. You want another bailout? What am I, the federal government? Anyway, I find Mr. Briny there, who also lost his Wingull. Finally, a cause I can get behind. So I crush the Aqua Grunt and move on. I take a visit to Devon Corp and he gives me a free smartphone, but as soon as I leave, a scientist stops me and insists on installing the phone feature because he didn't before. How the fuck do you still have a job? And forces me to call the Devon Corp president. You don't need to do this, Game Freak. I'm glad you've got it. Stop forcing it on me. Actually, this time around, the phone is awful. Before, you could just refuse everyone's number and not be pestered by their inane calls. This time around, everyone is forcibly added to match call and they bother you all the fucking time. Oh, this is fucking cancerous. Why would you do this? Game Freak can never have a normal, good idea. They have to pile it under layers of bullshit. So the president of Devon Corp has decided that deputizing a small child is better than paying a $5 shipping fee and wants me to deliver a letter to Duford Town and a package to Slateport. I did not sign up to work in the Amazon Fulfillment Center. Slateport, more like Slaveport. Got him! So because he owes me for saving his bird/possible lover, Mr. Briny gives me a ride. Because I'm a sensible person and also G is underleveled, I go through the cave to find Steven Stone first, and you'll be surprised to know what Mr. Stone's specialty is. That's right, it's Steel-type Pokemon. Anyway, I gave Steven his letter. He gives me his favorite TM, which
he
is
doesn't have
one
a
that
single
only
type
one of his
special.
Pokemon can use, and it's not even his ace. Good job, Steven.
It's a
And he leaves
variety
me
of
there in a hole.
minerals and
Dick.
stones.
So I crawled out and head to Duford Gym to fight Brawley, the footage of which is lost thanks to OBS's patented "you left the pause button on after coming back from getting a sandwich, go fuck yourself, I'm not going to highlight that at all and leave you looking like a liar" technology. But just rest assured that it was a suitably amazing fight that I definitely didn't lose to 4 times. Don't type that fucking comment. So I arrive in Slateport City and fight my way through the beach full of tourists, demanding I have a Pokemon battle with them and insisting I give them my number. I arrive at the Marine office only to be told that Captain Stern went to the museum. So I go to the museum and find that Aqua's milling about. Oh, well, that's definitely not a good sign. So when I go to give Captain Stern the Sea Pearl, I mean the Devon part, sorry, I thought it was in a more chaotic story for a second, Aqua shows up and tries to convince me to go party with them. Sir, I am not that kind of girl. So I crush them and Archie shows up and calls his own men simps for losing to a child. Sir, that's a combination of words I don't much care for.
Graham,
Archie thinks I'm part of Team Magma,
What's
which I
that?
found quite insulting,
Okay.
honestly. Do I look like I hang out in a volcano to you? On second thought, don't answer that. He says I will rue the day I stood in the way of his plans, and then just gives up and leaves. What a good sport. I find the Aqua Grunt I beat up in the forest and Rusturf Tunnel, and he's apparently so traumatized he gives me a free TM and begs me not to hurt him. Did I just mug that guy? I run into Birch on the next route, who asks where Brendan
I'm
is.
starting
well, in
to
my experience, he's
realize-
either with my wife or writing Supercorp fanfiction.
I'm gonna have to
Love
finish
you,
this,
poet.
huh?
Please don't fuck with me. I will cry. Actually, I found him further along the
Oh,
route, so apparently Birch
brother.
wasn't even looking very hard. Anyway, I crushed him. Okay, he crushed me. But I crushed him the second time, and G evolved into a slightly bigger child. So I spent some time training my Pokemon in the road between Mauville and Verdanturf, because between all the trainers, there's like 30 Pokemon with trainer XP, and you're a fool if you don't soak it up like the gluttonous hog you are. But after that, my only thing to do is snag the bike and rush right for the gym. In the remake, they made Mauville a real crossroads town that you keep coming back to for story reasons as part of the general padding the game with dialogue that goes into most of these remakes. Actually, fuck, I forgot, Wally's here and he wants to battle with just a level 16 Rolls. Aw. Poor kid. After crushing the dreams of my apprentice and putting him on an arc to train and grow stronger and meet me at Victory Road and get crushed again, I continue on to the gym. Kinda. I'm telling this story out of order. Watson's gym has this obnoxious button puzzle that is determined to make you think you can get
It's
around
really
the gym
not
trainers,
that
but you can't, and
obnoxious.
it makes you die a little inside. But once you actually get to Watson, it turns
Why-
out he's a
this
very
is-
gentle and supportive pile driver right into the pavement. I got by just stacking Calm Mind on G, at least until he got in that cheeky sonic boom, little stinker. Second time around, I tried to do the Calm Mind trick again, but somebody decided to blow up. Fine, I'll go level grind some
no,
more, you
imagine.
bastard. Third time's the charm, and this time I actually managed to get a few Calm Minds off, and she survived the self-destruct on 1 HP like a fucking mad lass. Gee, I'm sorry I ever doubted you. Now don't fuck this up for me. And you know what happened? She didn't. She bodied all of them. Mantrick was a little bitch with the super potions, but I was equally scummy, so I guess I can't complain. I mean, I'm gonna complain anyway, but still. So on the road to Falarbor Town, one of the longest and most interesting routes.
Okay, so was there any actual critique of the game there? Or just a story of how you brute forced a Calm Mind sweep of Watson with a Curlia by soft resetting and spamming potions until you survived the Voltorb self-destruct? What am I watching? I'm so confused. Like, is there any point to this video? Like, there's no serious critique of the Watson fight here. You know, you're not saying it's poorly designed. You're not saying it's well designed, that it, you know, at least makes a decent attempt at stopping you from doing a simple sweep with items. You're not even saying about how items break the game. You're just talking about how you beat this fight in the way that you wanted to. Okay, sure.
Routes in the game, I decided to take on the Winstraight family because the reward they give you is a Macho Brace, an item that doubles the EV points you get. Normally this is a good thing because it means you can spend less time making your Pokemon stronger, but in normal story mode play, you can't control what you fight, and so that just means my Pokemon are becoming terrible faster. Hope you like those.
What the fuck are you talking about? You can control what you fight. That's what random encounters. You can just do random encounters of the mons you want. That's how you can do it. And even if you don't want to be optimal and grind, then you're still getting more EVs, which is more stats, even if they're not in the exact perfect area. Having more bulk and more speed and more special attack is still a direct advantage over your opponents. Do you not know how these work?
Attack EVs, G. So the route to Falarbor takes you up a mountain, through a fiery cave, and out another long path that leads up to a rest house, and then through an ash field before finally reaching Falarbor Town. What the fuck? That's like 4 environment changes on one route. That's not even counting the desert, which is completely optional and unlocked later as a shortcut back to Mauville, if you don't feel like going through the rest of Meteor Falls.
It's
Remember
more
what I
than
said
one
earlier
route.
about how some of the routes in this game are really long and really interesting?
more
There's
than
another
one
one
route.
later after we get Badge 5, but this is some really cool environment design here.
I thought you
Makes
hated
sense
it!
that the cable car and desert aren't accessible, because otherwise you'd miss
my
out on
God.
this really good route and tons of experience. The Ashlands themselves are probably the most unique area in the entire franchise, and you can pick up little puffs
Yes,
of dirt
I
to
agree.
make
I
flutes
think-
with.
I-
This
I
is
think
delightful. Once we
113
make it
is
through
really
the
cool.
Ashlands and get to Falarba
Is this
Town,
a
the first thing to
criticism or a
do is
praise? I
run
don't know.
immediately past Falarba Town and over to Meteor Falls. On the way there, G evolved into Gardevoir, and now I have a walking nuke for a best friend. Nothing can hurt me now, except the dark. One thing of note is that Gardevoir's sprite is pretty androgynous in Gen 3. It's funny how later gens would actually try to make them look a lot more feminine, you know, round out their horn, give them a masculine counterpart evolution. Man, all those memes really fucked Game Freak up, didn't it? Apparently in Meteor Falls, Magma and Aqua get into a fight about a meteor that they're trying to steal from some scientist. Magma cheeses it. Archie apologizes for assuming I was part of Team Magma. Great, now apologize for your men hitting on me. I am only 10. I then have to chase Team Magma back to Mount Chimney because they're trying to make a volcano erupt to expand the land and kill everyone in its wake. Did you not think this through? We want more land for human expansion. What humans? You're
Why
gonna
is-
kill them all, Maxie.
Okay,
Are you
hold on.
infected
This is-
by an alien plague?
This is a bit of
the
a
fucking
this is a delayed pause, but I gotta ask, why did you spend that whole time talking about, like, specifically Gardevoir's gender? Because, like, I mean, first of all, I don't agree that it's very androgynous in the original depiction, but that is a subjective opinion. I understand that. But, like, why is that in the 6-hour video something you spent time talking about? This is a question I've had for a lot of this, actually. Why does she talk about the things that she spends time talking about? Whatever, let's just... Oh, whatever.
Groovefly solution? You're gonna bury humanity, you trash man. You piss boy. You prodigious buffoon. So after I destroy Maxie with facts and
Prodigious buffoon
logic,
is
he
a good
just
insult.
leaves and leaves the meteorite here. What the fuck is going on in that man's head? Then Archie asks, whose side am I on? Sir, I literally wasn't allowed to move on with my badges until I came up here. Perhaps you should stop blocking every route and children wouldn't go looking for you to get you out of their way. I'm on whichever side helps me become the champion. Actually, since I'm here, out of all the wordy supervillains Pokemon has, Magma and Aqua are probably the best because they only have a few moments in the story. Plasma and Galactic are encountered at damn near every route in their respective games, and you often have no choice but to stop them. But I went several towns before running into Magma and Aqua again, and I think that's pretty neat. I won't run into them again until the Weather Institute, and that's a whole 2.5 badges away. And that makes sense. They need that time to go concoct their evil schemes. I shouldn't be running into them every
what
5
are you
minutes,
talking
Unova.
about?
They're not as good as Giovanni, but I'll take Patchy the Pirate and the Sons of Adam as a compromise. So the gym in Lava Ridge Town is, how do I put it? Fucking terrible. You have to step on these pads to go between levels, and the distinction between what's a pad and what's a trainer hiding under the mud, hoping you get there before they suffocate to death, is left up to the machinations of fate. Sometimes it just throws you in the
Skill
middle of a
issue.
double
There is-
battle.
there is a
Isn't that
pattern to
great?
it.
And the gym leader stammers her introduction despite having all that time to prepare it. Great first impressions, Flannery. Why did so many girls
That's-
have crushes on you back in 2002? So because this is a fire gym and
I was gonna
have
say it's
Corphish, I
characterization,
feel that
but
what I'm
then,
about to do
yeah,
to these Pokemon is some
you
kind
knew
of
the
war
answer.
crime. Or at least I would if Slugma didn't get off a sunny day boosted overheat. Fine, Banshee, solve everything. So I have the 4th badge, and then Brendan gives me some goggles to get through the desert. Love you, poet. Heading back to Petalburg, I decided to take the Rust Turf Tunnel instead of Meteor Falls because I wanted to explore the desert. The desert's a cool zone, but there isn't much to it. It's just a place to fight ground trainers and just see this new tile set. But I did come here for one reason, and that was to catch a Trapinch. Trapinch is really good. It evolves into Flygon, which covers my need for a fly user, and also covers a lot of weaknesses in my team. You can't go wrong with one, honestly. One trip back through Rust Turf Tunnel in the woods later, and I'm back at my father's. So the Petalburg's gym's gimmick is item usage. You choose a room that centers around a different stat, attack, speed, defense, whatever, and not only are the Pokemon geared toward that stat, they use items to boost those stats. It is kind of interesting because that necessitates different counterplay. Do you want to go for the bulky ones and melt them, or take your bulky Pokemon against Sweeper? When you reach Norman, he's using everything. His main Pokemon is a Slacking, which hits like a truck and can tank a lot of damage, but moves very slowly. I fought like a dirty coward,
It is
spamming
not
Calm
slow.
Mind on Spinda because spamming Calm Mind is literally the best decision you can ever make, and with G being a lot faster than any of his other Pokemon, it was just a straight sweep. You see how broken this Pokemon is? People think I'm joking when I say Gardevoir needs some serious nerfs because they aren't very good and competitive.
What?
But in the main game, they just slaughter by virtue of having good moves. A big problem with Psychic types in general.
What the fuck are you talking about? Gardevoir needs a nerf because it's too strong in single player because of Calm Mind sweeps. Alright, let's There's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to unpack here. So let's start with the obvious, and that is that Gardevoir isn't... You're talking about this in the context of Gen 3, right? Gardevoir is pretty directly power crept by, like, Alakazam in the context of Gen 3, because the bulk isn't that important, right? You know, you have enough bulk with item usage specifically to set up. Furthermore, the ability to set up is not a trait that is exclusive to Gardevoir. In fact, if you are in the context of an items allowed playthrough, literally any Pokemon in the game can set up. This means that, like, even incredibly weak Pokemon can be complete sweepers if you get them in a context where they survive at least one move and can thus use spam X items on them to get them in a position where they can sweep trainers. Saying that Gardevoir is overpowered because it can do something that dozens and dozens and hundreds of Pokemon can do is just very wrong. Gardevoir does not do anything exceptional in that regard. In the context of being a good, particularly good setup sweeper, I would even disagree with that notion, because without the context of EVs, which you clearly have, otherwise you don't outspeed slacking by virtue of your base speeds, Gardevoir is not that fast. In the context of Gen 3, it's sufficiently fast, but in the context of later generations, especially where power creep has raised the requisite level of speed you need to be a fast Pokemon, Gardevoir isn't very good at that, and needs specifically agility in order to boost its speed, which is another setup turn. And more setup turns mean you're more likely to get crit, etc., etc. So within that context, I would say that Gardevoir is actually pretty mediocre as a setup sweeper. You'd much rather have something like a Dragon Dancer that can compensate for its speed issues with a speed boosting move to allow it to outspeed and kill things. Or a Pokemon with better priority moves to always go first. Or a Pokemon with better bulk to actually survive hits with potions and set up more easily. Gardevoir has none of these traits. The thing that makes Gardevoir good in your case is that its type is pretty good and it gets good coverage. And that is a trait that a lot of Pokemon have. Gardevoir's main asset in Gen 3 specifically is that it has a good move pool in terms of coverage. Psychic is an incredible stab move for a lot of the game, hitting most things neutrally, if not super effectively. There are obviously some types that give you trouble, but those types are not super common in the context of your single-player playthrough. And those types that do exist, namely Dark types, which are fairly common in evil team fights, are often weak to other coverage moves you get, specifically Thunderbolts, which you can obtain a TM of after New Mauville, which is very easy to get and not that far out of your way. You're going to want to go for it anyway. That's why Gardevoir is as good as it is. It's not broken. It's just solid. What the fuck are you talking about? Every mon can do these setup strats. And I don't fucking...
Gen 1 was that they had very high Spatak and Spadoof by virtue of how the special stat worked, and their big weakness was physical attacks. A lot of them were reconfigured to just one of those in Gen 2, but Gardevoir, again, has very high Spatak and Spadoof, and the ability to pad those stats with an early game Calm Mind. Calm Mind makes you stronger and bulkier, and it really should only do one of those things. This isn't helped by the fact that Dark, the type added to ranged psychic types in, is special. So even without Calm Mind, they can still take a crunch to the face. And with it, it's even worse. You'd think Gen 4
Calm Mind does not hurt your physical bulk,
split, but it didn't. Gardevoir just got even more moves, and they could already learn Reflect to curb physical attackers. You give Gardevoir Reflect and Calm Mind, and they're basically unkillable. How bad is it? It's this bad.
Why are you putting this footage here? Why is this footage here?
I'm not kidding, this is the single most broken Pokemon in the main game that has largely gone unfixed because...
What the fuck are you talking about? This is textbook cherry picking, right? Textbook cherry picking, okay? Let's go back, let's go back, let's go back, let's go back, let's go back. Let's go back here. Okay, Dragon Rush does about 50 damage. Okay, let's go into the calc. PvP. Gardevoir. And then we're going to look at Garchomp. Right? We're taking off all of this. No boosting nature, no good item. Looking at Dragon Rush. Same level, take 50%. Reflect up, and a lot of bulk. What's it 250? You're taking half your health without Reflect up. With Reflect up, take this much. This is the situation you've manufactured, right? A situation in which you are, one, already set up, and two, leveraging a lot of bulk from your EVs. You have put in a lot of specific work to making Gardevoir as strong as it is in this situation, right? This is not the baseline level of power for Gardevoir. You have constructed a situation in which it is good. Similarly, let's pick up a random... Let's look at fucking Sea King, right? Fuck yeah, Sea King, sure. Wow, look at that. Sea King can also take a hit from a Garchomp easily. And, oh, let's say we're at, +2 special attack. Plus, oh wow, look. That's Life Orb. We don't need a Life Orb. Life Orb's for... That's a bite item. But, like, look at that. +2 I think kills. That's not even stab. Well, let's plot a Surf, right? Surf? Oh wow, Surf does 50%. Look at that. And this is a way worse attacking Pokemon. And Sea King can do it reliably. This is not a case for broken Gardevoir. It's a case for setup moves being broken. Setup moves are the problem that you're looking at. And they're not a problem because they take skill to use. Unless you have items which make them broken. Using the game's tools to break it is not a bug in the program. Gardevoir doesn't need a nerf. Also, 6 levels is not a huge disadvantage
I'm
at high
not
level.
kidding. This is the single most broken Pokemon in the main game that has largely gone unfixed because most people just don't bother to find out that this is such a problem. One Pokemon should not be breaking the game that much. Anyway, I got the balance badge.
not
That's
one
fucking
Pokemon.
hilarious given what I did to get it. After that, a strange man asked me to follow him into his house, and it turns out to be Wally's father, who heard Wally ran away and wants to thank me for inspiring him to do that. Wow, way to tell me you hate your kid, bro. He gives me surf as thanks. Hooray! Now I can cross that tiny river behind which lies the rest of the game. So the routes between here and Fortree are interesting because it's mostly a trek through a tropical grassland filled with rivers and tall cliffs. This half of the game is more centered around water, so even the land routes involve a lot of it, and visually it's very interesting. Lots of changing terrain and winding routes and multiple linear paths depending on what bike you have. And I actually forgot how to get over these things. I had to look it up. I like this aspect of Gen 3. It's simple, but it does feel like I'm on an adventure through dangerous landscapes, just a little bit. I feel like Pokemon really should have evolved this 2D look rather than getting progressively more 3D with each generation. I then found Team Aqua at the Weather Institute, who are looking for... Actually, what are they looking for? I can't remember. I crushed them because it's just tradition at this point. A little while later, I ran into Brendan, and he challenged me to a fight, which I won, naturally, and he gave me the HM for Fly. Well, that's nice. Tell McKay I said hi. Arriving in Fortree City, I bothered some of the locals. Why are you living in a treehouse? Are you 8? Give me a TM or I'm going to bully you.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Woo! Mugging people works! Anyway, the gym is blocked off because
Why is this
something
the
is in
gag
the
you're
way
going
and I have to
for?
go out of the city and onto the route to find Steven, who will tell me, oh yeah, that's a Kecleon. Nasty little bastards. Use the scope to find them. Hooray! The gym is open. Fortree Gym is a flying type gym that uses these rotating walls as its puzzle. You need to maneuver yourself in a way so that you can move the walls the way you want them to open the way to Winona. It's not bad. It requires a little bit of thinking. Really good for the kids, honestly. The fight with Winona was really no big deal. Her team is all flying, so Shockwave handles most of them, and Psychic took care of both Tropius and Altaria. Like I said, G is pretty busted. The next stop on our journey is Mount Pyre, because we overheard Team Aqua saying that they were chasing Team Magma there. Now, Mount Pyre is weird. It's another Ghost and Psychic dungeon, and at the end you can get a Shadow Ball TM, which is neat. But it's a completely optional dungeon that you don't actually have to do. There's a hallway to the left that takes you right to the peak of Mount Pyre where you actually need to go, which is a shame, because I feel like Mount Pyre could have been a really cool dungeon. But since it was made optional, it no longer matters, and it's just a few floors with trainers to fight. So instead we take the...
Wait, I thought you liked Mount Pyre being an optional dungeon is legitimately cool, and in a better game, the Shadow Ball TM would actually be a legitimately good reward for doing that. You know? You brave an optional and difficult area to receive a rare item that you wouldn't be able to get anywhere else. It's a cool way of promoting exploration, and you're just ignoring that for the sake of oh, it's optional, so it doesn't matter anymore. No, optional content does matter. That's why exploration is a core part of the series. What? Don't just ignore it. No. It Why does that make it irrelevant?
A shortcut to the peak, run along the cliffs, and then reach a gauntlet of aqua grunts that is definitely not the same gauntlet from Generation 1. This is completely different because at the end they challenge you to a double battle. Ooh. And at the end, Archie goes, now I can bring my plans to fruition. What are your plans? What did you like to know? And he vanishes. Sometimes I sit there and stare at that spot, wondering where he went. Where did you go, gay pirate man? Then the old lady tells me that the blue orb and
Where
red
did
orb
you go,
belong
gay
together
pirate
and can't
man?
be separated, and tells me to go please bring them back so they can be orb wives in peace, and gives me a key to the magma hideout to do it. And honestly, reuniting a pair of inanimate lesbians is the single greatest mission a child could be given. Don't worry, old lady, I'll bring them back, I swear. Right after I do some shopping. So I run into Brendan in front of the Lily Cove Mall, who insists he's not buying any dolls, and honestly, I didn't suspect he was buying dolls at first, but now that he went out of his way to deny it, he's definitely buying dolls. Make sure you buy one for your girlfriend, and one for your girlfriend's wife. Give me a plushie, Brendan. Okay, he decided to fight me instead, and when he loses, he can't take it and says he's going home to Littleroot. I just humiliated him so badly that he gave up. Seriously, Poet, you don't deserve this shit you're getting from me. Getting back to my mission to reunite the Orb Wives takes me to Mount Chimney, where Team Magma's hiding, which is a much more fitting hideout than the one they have in Ruby and Submissive Ruby. They are hidden deep inside a volcano that's almost maze-like. It's actually pretty cool. But it seems there's no air conditioning in there because several of the grunts complain about being hot, and even one regrets not joining Team Aqua. But as you get closer to Maxie, oh boy, the magma grunts just tucked into every little nook and cranny. I fucking love it, she said sarcastically. Yes, I do want to fight your 50th Zubat, sir. I make it to Maxie, and he uses the blue orb to control Groudon, only for Groudon to rocket into the sky. As you do. And Maxie's just completely flummoxed, like he's genuinely confused as to what just happened. Not only did the blue orb not work, but this creature of the land just took off into the sky as if repelled from the orb, and then he blames me for it. Like, sir, I am a 10-year-old girl. I cannot lift that dinosaur. Please calm your fabulous tits. Well, he wants to fight, and I slap him down because that's just how this goes at this point. And then he's willing to listen when I say there's a reason that Groudon left, and then leaves to go chase after it. Very productive conversation, Maxie. Returning to Slayport, it turns out that Captain Stern is finished with his submarine project that he intends to use to explore the ocean, so it's a good thing we brought those Devon goods to him. Good job, Stern. I'm very proud of, and Team Aqua stole it. I don't even know how they got in there. I'm almost impressed. But unfortunately for them, I know exactly where their hideout is. It's in the city that's crawling with aqua grunts. Seriously, you could not be any less conspicuous if you tried. Where the magma hideout was a mess of navigating tunnels, the aqua hideout is more high-tech, with teleporter pads all over the place. So I'm getting Silphco flashbacks, and I don't like it. No wonder people hate working for you. One gang works in a sweltering volcano base, the other gang just turned their base into a maze for sheer sadistic thrill. Because Team Aqua's Pokemon are all water, dark, and flying, Sceptile and G can wreck this place like nobody's business. I actually taught G Thunderbolt just for this. I eventually make it to the bay and have to fight
I know
Matt.
you didn't. I saw you use
just
it in
rocking
Magma
the
Hideout.
shirtless look today. Good for you, Matt. Mastectomy scars are nothing to be ashamed of. Be yourself. I'm gonna crush you though, so like square the fuck up. But it turns out that he was just stalling for time so Archie could finish preparing the submarine. Clever boy, Matt. With myself thoroughly humbled, I left the Aqua Base in search of Archie, and here starts the dreaded sea routes. Okay, so the entire latter half of the game's story takes place on the ocean. Given the importance placed on the balance of land and sea, half the game taking place on the sea isn't necessarily a bad idea. Exploring the ocean is cool. People like doing it. Wind Waker is nothing but that, and it's fucking great. The problem is the fact that the gameplay of the sea routes is unchanged. Sea routes are, in my opinion, the most underutilized aspect of the Pokemon games. There's so many cool things you could do with it if you wanted to for comparatively little effort. Make wayfinding a mechanic to figure out where you're going. Give you interesting places to explore, little islands and coral reefs. Have interesting things in the ocean to find. But in Pokemon, sea routes are just roads filled with wild Pokemon and trainers, and they're places where the wild Pokemon infest every tile. On land routes, wild Pokemon are only found in tall grass, and the tall grass is used to detail the environments as well. But the rest of the route is relatively safe. But sea routes are like caves where you get harassed on every single damn tile. They're also visually very boring. There's water, there's rocks, sometimes there's dirt, that's it. The only thing Hoenn added was the ability to dive, which should be really cool, but in practice, diving just takes you to a canyon that is just more rock. Sometimes there's a little foliage, but otherwise it's just another path that you find a few other Pokemon in. Can you imagine being a dev on this game, having the entire theme of land and sea drilled into your head, and not making the sea routes anything close to as interesting as the land routes? And what's even worse is that despite the entire Pokemon fanbase complaining about this, from the moment these games came out, when IGN made the same complaint about the remakes, people got mad at them for bringing it up. Like, they were the target of mockery for too much water.
It's
Like,
not a huge bullet
Assholes,
point.
you were complaining about this shit for a decade and they still haven't fucking fixed it. Instead, they wasted their time making an entire post-game story where you get ranted to about ham-fisted philosophy by crappy characters and then catch another few useless legendary. It's so fucking ridiculous that they can't get half
Why do
their
you hate
gameplay loop
legendaries
right,
so much?
even after two. Oh, hey, we're here. So before I could chase after Aqua, I need the badge from Moss Deep's gym before I'm allowed to dive underwater. Kind of like how I needed to beat the instructor at a game of Hearthstone to get my firearms license. Tate and Liza's gym is filled with rotational puzzles. You have to hit the right pads to make things rotate to make a path to the next objective. It's not bad, but it has the lava ridge problem where you always think you might be able to worm your way around the gym trainers, but you just can't.
Yes,
On the
you
plus
can.
side, the design of the gym actively discourages backtracking to the Pokemon Center, which is neat. I always feel the gym is ruined when you make me do that. Tate and Liza are the token double
What?
battle among the
No.
gym leaders, and all their Pokemon are psychic, but most of them are rock and ground as well, so Sceptile's got this, and G can take care of Xatu. And G can trace levitate, which means Claydol's cheeky little earthquakes aren't a problem. Then come out their signature Pokemon, Lunatone and Solrock. At first, things are going well, but then Solrock gets off a sunny day, and Lunatone starts to stack those calm mines. Hey, that's my cheap strategy, you lunar bitch! But it's alright, Larion's got this.
Why are you being so mean to this child? Also, Larian? Larian?
Oh, crap. Oh, crap. Well, I don't have any physical attackers left, so I guess we're stuck chipping away at Lunatone's health and maybe confusing them. Okay, you are officially on my shit list. I just decided to fight fire with fire and start raising my own stats to put us on equal footing, praying Lunatone didn't knock me out in the process. See what I mean? Calm Mind is broken as fuck. You know, I'm starting to think this is personal. It's okay, I got them eventually. Our combination was shattered. All your Pokemon went down like chumps. It was just Lunatone that survived. What kind of trainer relies on one single Pokemon to carry the entire... Anyway, we're off to chase Team Aqua to the bottom of the ocean. We're off to the Space Center to stop Team Magma from robbing the place of its rocket... What? You're on this again? You're still trying to make the volcano erupt? You already awoke a giant Pokemon. You're back on this? Well, taking control of the Earth itself didn't work. We should go back to the drawing board. I really feel like we were getting somewhere with that volcano thing. This is actually really interesting because Team Magma failed to take control of Groudon and then just said, well, I guess we're going to move on to our next goal. Like they've completely given up on the legendary Pokemon. I almost admire that. The evil teams these days are so tied to the legendaries that the idea that they could fail and just move on to the next plan is almost inconceivable. This is... actually kind of neat. It isn't until after you beat them that they start to think that maybe they're barking up the wrong tree and decide to investigate the matter. I'll have more to say about this later on, but suffice to say, I think Team Aqua and Magma have aged a lot better than most evil teams. Anyway, now that I've got the proper form signed in triplicate to the Moss Deep Gym, I now have license to dive underwater, because the Pokemon League is run by Vogons, apparently. We're chasing after a sailor who is obsessed with getting his whale. I plowed my way through the Aqua Grunts and then got there before Archie somehow. What, did you stop for a pretzel? And did you give me one? Sadly, the power of the red orb only made Kyogre hunger for the flesh of her brother, and Archie is left holding the literal idiot ball. Maxie comes by and tells Archie what he figured out like 2 dungeons ago, and we come up to the surface to see that climate change is upon us. It's at this point that Archie and Maxie fully come to grips with what they've done. They've doomed everyone, and they didn't realize it until it's too late. I think that's what I like about Archie and Maxie. It's not that they're misguided, it's not that they want to do good, it's that they're fucking idiots. These two go about trying to create an apocalypse, not realizing just how suicidal it is until dawn on the final day, and they realize, oh, hang on. They spend the entire game like, I'm gonna cause a climate crisis and kill a lot of people. And then when they cause a climate crisis and it starts killing people, they're like,
that's just not the plot of the game.
Showed all us normies. I love how Maxie tells me, don't say anything.
That's not the plot of the game.
The most smug bitch grin possible. So to clean up this mess, we have one option, and that's to go to Sky Pillar. Because what do you do when the land and sea are fighting? Call Sky Daddy, of course. So I climb up to the top of the pillar, see this massive dragon-looking motherfucker. He takes one look at me and goes, ugh, this again, and flies off.
It's him!
I love how she's just mischaracterizing the plot of the game in order to...
I fly back to Sootopolis City to watch as Rayquaza descends from the clouds like a heavenly angel, lowers himself down upon his 2 brethren who are fighting, and cries,
When I come out, I want all these freeloading parasites out of here!
and then they slink back to their caves like frightened little children, and Rayquaza goes back to his perch. This whole sequence is just me telling on them to their dad. It's awesome. Even Archie and Maxie comment on the fact that he just zipped down and Uncle filled them back to sleep, like, wow, we really went through all that trouble and it was fixed that quickly. Compared to Ruby and Sapphire, the calamity that Aqua and Magma unleash is far less intense in Pokemon Emerald. The weather changes rapidly, and you can fix it by rushing to Rayquaza. Even the music it plays is a lot less serious, it's just a slowed down version of heavy rainfall. In Sapphire, all of Hoenn is plagued by intense rain, with the sound of rainfall rainfall just pummeling into your ears with lightning flashing and while panicked, hasty
What are
music
you
plays.
talking about? That music also plays in Emerald? Oh god.
It really captures a feeling of anxiety and fleeing from a storm, like everyone's hastily getting in their cars, driving off, probably getting on ships, trying to decide what they should take before deciding to only take the essentials.
This
Just
is a
listening to
fan
this
remix, I
music,
can't
you can
tell.
imagine a little girl dropping her teddy bear, but they don't go back for it. In Ruby, the entire land is covered in bright, oppressive, pulsing sunlight that even just looking at makes you feel like you're under a hot desert sun. And the music is this intense, harsh tone that's borderline creepy.
So you complain about Lavender Tower, but not this? Like, I agree that it's atmospheric, but I feel like this should not be immune from criticism if you complained about other similar piercing soundtracks.
This just feels like you're living in a drought. This is the one thing Ruby and Sapphire have above Emerald, in that they make the weather calamity feel like a calamity. Even the response from Team Aqua and Magma respectively carries more horror behind it as they realize the full extent of what they've done. Now, the remakes are the worst of these because while the story hasn't changed much, it's been made much more verbose and lathers the player in grandiose importance the entire time. Even the music is worse. The heavy rainfall music sounds more like the underwater stage of a Sonic game.
I don't agree. Have you played a Sonic game? I haven't, but
While
like,
drought sounds like I'm trying
I'm
to
pretty
pilot
sure it
a
doesn't sound
spaceship
like
away
that.
from a star that's about to go supernova. I'm not a fan. I think the heavy rainfall and drought themes of the original Ruby and Sapphire are some of the best music the series has ever had, both for how well composed they are, but also how they each capture a very different kind of terror that their respective weather is supposed to bring. When people talk about good music in Pokemon, they don't really think about where it's used. The music in a video game is all about the atmosphere it sets.
What?
Sure, maybe some songs in Pokemon are creepier
Dude, do
or
people
more
not-
intense, like the
not do
theme
that?
to En's Room and Zinnia's battle theme comes to mind, but the difference is that Ruby and Sapphire are setting the mood for something that's actually good and creepy and unsettling. En's Room is a creepy theme, but En is the single most obnoxiously verbose waste of effort, value, money, space, and time the series has ever
What are
had.
you
Zinnia's
talking
battle
about?
theme is intense, but the actual fight with Zinnia is not. I did come here expecting to really kick Team Aqua and Magma in the teeth, but I really think they've both aged surprisingly well in the original versions. Their dialogue is succinct, and their characters are a lot more charming than later villains. They really capture the vibe of an eco-terrorist, and
you
that
just
they're
not
fucking
want to
idiots who
read?
only
What is
hasten
going
ecological
on?
collapse. I know people like the later villains for spouting ham-fisted philosophy and pretending to be deep and complex, but there's only so much complex you could get when your end goal is the same as the bad guy from Kingdom Hearts. Aqua and Magma are good. You two get to live. Anyway, now that I'm free of the plot, I'm allowed to get the last gym badge to prove I'm worthy of challenging the Elite Four, because neither rain nor drought nor big kaiju fight is going to halt the bureaucracy for even a second. Sutopolis Gym is great because you can bypass every trainer fight and go right to the gym leader if you're capable of doing second-grade puzzles. The gym leader is Juan, who looks like if James Bond was a Tumblr sexy man and uses water Pokemon. His first Pokemon is a Love Disc. A fucking Love Disc. A Pokemon that can't actually fight and just exists to be cute. Calm thy trousers, Don Juan. The next is Celio, who is slightly more capable of taking sharp leaps to the face. Slightly. Then comes Kingdra, who crunches my Sceptile, and so now I need a new strategy. So I thought, hey, let's fight water with water. This did not work. Fine, I guess we'll have to rely on G again. After curb stomping Kingdra, Juan brought out a Crawdaunt. Unfortunately, I thought G Thunderbolt. Love the smell of cooking lobster. Then comes out a Wishcash, a ground type. Well played, Juan. But sadly, Psychic will always beat the sheer raw sexual energy of that mustache. So now I have the final badge. That was
Why you wanna
anticlimactic.
fuck
So
the
now I'm moving on to
Wishcash?
Victory Road, which unlike the last game, wasn't cut and replaced with an outdoor gauntlet. Damn it. But very early in the dungeon, I run into
wasn't
Wally,
cut.
who is determined not to lose to me again. He's trained. He's gotten stronger. He's at the end of his character arc, and now just has to beat his rival. Come on, Wally, you could do it. He opens with Altaria, who is just about as fast as the truck it hits like. I'm going into this
What?
quite
No.
underleveled, in fact. And I
Huh?
did this deliberately so Wally would outlevel my Pokemon in this battle. He takes down Sceptile and G comes out. Altaria falls to a Thunderbolt, and out comes Delcatty, who falls to a single Psychic. Come on, Wally, you can do it. His next Pokemon is a Magneton, who bodies my Larion. Like, holy shit, he's so powerful.
Larion,
He
it's
even confuses my
Lyron.
Vibrava.
Or
Oh no,
Lairon.
it's okay, I got off that cheeky little
Lyron
crunch.
is
Out comes
wrong.
Roselia, who crunches my poor little bug with a Giga Drain. G comes out and slays Roselia with a Psychic. Murderer! Wally's last Pokemon is his Gardevoir, who's already at a disadvantage because Thunderbolt isn't resistant. Monster! And then another crit takes him out for good. Butcher! I'm sorry, Wally, but it had to be this way. Wally's fight is actually fun in this version. In the remake, it's certainly presented better, where Wally challenges you in a field of flowers, set with his own rock track as a battle theme, feeling like it was ripped right out of those 90s tournament cartoons. I love it. But unfortunately, they made it easier. His Pokemon team is exactly the same despite the mechanical changes between Gen 3 and Gen 6, and for some reason, Wally's Gardevoir is replaced with a Gallade. Okay, like, but why though? You changed nothing else about his team. Why did you make this change? I mean, I know why. Wally's Gardevoir was always male, and the fact that Gardevoir can be male was a point of contention among some very sad people, and has always been the subject of exactly 2 jokes played on repeat for almost 20 years. This was the only reason Gallade was even added in Gen 4, and Game Freak has been taking this way too personally ever since. Pokemon fandom has always had this really weird hang-up about...
Huh? Okay, I understand. No, I don't. I don't get what's going on. I have the opinion that Gardevoir should not be gender locked. A lot of Pokemon should not be gender locked, including Gallade. I do think there is a vague notion of a point being made here. I just don't understand why this is a focal point of your discussion. Why is this your priority? I'm so confused.
Gender. Masculine Pokemon being able to be female and feminine Pokemon being able to be male have always been a huge draw of hissy fits, but I've always felt it was too foolish of Game Freak to entertain that notion. Like, the solution to male Gardevoir isn't to make a masculine alternative evolution. The solution is for players to stop being such pathetic sacks of chauvinistic shit, especially when the end result is that Wally's party is weaker than it was before. Doesn't the poor boy have enough problems?
It's not weaker. It's about the same. The problem is that your tools are stronger. Also, there's the fact that I think in a lot of ways, Gallade is a better fit for him than Gardevoir. Not because he's male and should have a male Pokemon. No, I think that Ralts being a very emotionally sensitive Pokemon is very fitting for the emotionally sensitive and immature Wally. And as he matures, gains more of a sense of self and purpose, he gains a Pokemon that is much more vigorous, as opposed to Gardevoir, who is still more empathetic. You know, Gallade represents that in a way that Gardevoir does not quite represent. Nothing to do with gender. I think it's a slight reservation. I would not have complained if Wally had kept Gardevoir, but I think if they were going to make a Mega Gallade for Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire as one of the new Megas for that game, and they wanted to make a prominent trainer have a Mega Gallade to show it off in a cool fight in the late game, I think Wally is a great choice. Moving on.
What about the rest of Victory Road, Lily? Oh, what about it? It's a cave. You've seen caves before. Getting right into the Elite Four, the first is Sydney, the Dark-type master. He opens with Mightyena, and who Crawdaunt makes handy work of. Then comes out Cacturne, who Ninetales makes quick work of. Oh yeah, I have a Ninetales, by the way. Absol is also made quick work of by Ninetales. Good job, Ninetales. Sceptile crushes Crawdaunt, and Flygon makes quick work of Shiftry, and we're moving on. At this point, the Elite Four is feeling more like a formality than the main story is. Next comes Phoebe, the Ghost Master. Dusclops kills himself, which is a pretty good metaphor for how I feel doing this, and Aggron takes out Baynet. I'm sorry, guys, I really don't have any jokes for this. After 3 generations, there's only so many ways you can make, and then I one-shot this Baynet sound interesting. I defeated Phoebe and move on to Glacia.
Then why
I
are
Glacia
you
move on to Drake, who actually has a
talking
full
about
team
it?
of dragons, unlike Lance, so good job, Drake. You're a better Dragon Master than the titular Dragon Master. Doesn't stop me from melting them, though, except Salamence, who hung on like a cheap little bastard he is, and knocked me down to 2 Pokemon. Stubborn bitch. Whatever, we're moving on to the champion. In Ruby and Sapphire, it was Steven Stone, but in Emerald, he's been upgraded to post-game Super Boss, so instead, the champion is Wallace, who is perhaps the sluttiest man in Pokemon, and that's including the remakes where everyone got sluttier. Game Freak was horny making this game. Anyway, Wallace's specialty is water Pokemon, and I promise I won't make a joke about being wet. Most of his Pokemon fell because G's still rocking Sith Lightning and won't hesitate. Ludicolo hung on by virtue of having more full restores than common sense. Wish Cash was a little smarter, raising his special defense, but then he misses his hyper beam. Fucking scrub. But then he got off an earthquake. See, this is what I get for mocking people. But he's 4 times weak to grass, so neener. Next comes Milotic, who is notorious for being able to take a pounding and recover quickly. This boy is a certified power bomb. But it's okay, because I have crabs. Wait. Whatever, I revived G and proceeded to electrocute Milotic's nipples off. Then he sends out a Gyarados. That just feels anticlimactic. Wallace can't stop gushing about how elegant our Pokemon were when they were fighting. I like this guy. And Brendan comes in surprised that I won. Poet, please, why do you hurt me this way? And then I go into a special empty room with an old DOS computer to be registered into the Hall of Fame. And that's Pokemon Emerald. I was pleasantly surprised by how well Gen 3 held up. The writing is as bad as Pokemon games always are, but the terrible writing is complemented by the fact that the main villains are cartoonishly stupid. And yeah, they should be. Pokemon trying to have a deep story always falters in 2 places. 1, it's fucking Pokemon, their best written villains are 2 chaotic bisexuals and a talking cat. And 2, Junichi Masuda, the writer of most of these games, can't actually fucking write to save his life. Dude's one of the worst writers I have ever seen, and I have seen Steven Universe in its entirety. So the main story being about 2 brainless jackasses both competing to see who can cause an ecological calamity the fastest, only to be completely and utterly blindsided by the fact that an ecological calamity is an ecological calamity, is fucking perfect. Some people deride Archie and Maxie as Saturday morning cartoon villains, but like... Guys, Pokemon is a Saturday morning cartoon. There's also the delightful fact that the game engine is buttery smooth. Character movement is super responsive, battle animations are so fast, dialogue boxes are fast. This is something we lost in later gens. The game's just slowed to a crawl. I miss the day of Gen 3.
Why is Black and White your example?
With the processor. This is also the last game where the story is spaced out. From this point onward, the games are going to badger you on every single route and city, either with your rivals, your adult supervision, the evil team, or any combination of the 3. And this is truly the last game that lets you off the leash at all. It's a melancholy feeling, to say the least, but I truly feel that Generation 3's design philosophy was the best. One where a story fits.
Yep, looks like they don't talk about Black 2 at all.
It also had the best legendary hunt in the entire series. Tell me you didn't feel like Evie O'Connell deciphering runes. This was fucking great. All in all, I think Generation 3 holds up extremely well. I'd go as far as to say that it remains the best generation of Pokemon.
Okay. And God of War's in the thumbnail here too. Okay. Cool. Okay, I think I'm fucking done. This is not a criticism of the games. It is an anecdote of your own personal experience replaying the games. Which is not inherently, like, a valueless thing to create, right? There's something to be gained in the process of, you know, replaying an old game and talking about the experience you had in a kind of let's play form. And that's clearly what Lily wanted to do with this video, is just kind of play through the games and talk about that experience. But to do it in the guise of making a meaningful critique of the games, I think is somewhat disingenuous. I am only an hour and a half into a 6.5-hour video, but it is plain to me, at least so far, that the criticisms are largely either inconsistent. A lot of them have been inconsistent, whether it's talking about how she likes long routes versus not liking long routes, whether she likes the writing or doesn't like the writing. You know, it's ludicrously inconsistent, and ultimately I think makes for a critique that says nothing and does nothing. Obviously, maybe there will be a broader conclusion 5 hours later in the video, but I feel as if you are going to ask me to sit through 5 hours of this kind of content, you should at the very least draw individual conclusions about each game before you move on. And reasonably speaking, I don't think it does that. I don't think each game has a conclusion about where it fits in the series. I think it would have been better had each of these generations been its own video, you know, varying in length as necessary for how she feels it fits with the game, and then drawing an individual conclusion about the state of the game and how she felt it held up, as opposed to her nostalgia in each case, rather than making it a, 6.5-hour video that you have to get to the end to hear any kind of meaningful sweeping conclusion about. that I think is my main criticism overall. I think it just kind of wastes a lot of time on criticisms that don't play into the overall argument, um, and ultimately comes off as just a very cynical and disingenuous look at Pokemon. It feels like someone who wanted to get clicks from Pokemon fans who are angry about someone bashing their games, and as such, it is a very disingenuous, cynical take on the series. Maybe I could be convinced to return to this game in a later stream. I don't know if that's possible because I did not enjoy myself. I might find like a co-host to come on and we can riff off of this better, because realistically at a certain point I ran out of bits. It's just not funny anymore. I don't know. Yeah, if you want to see more of this kind of content, leave a comment on the YouTube video. Boost me algorithms and low and such. I may never do this again because I am so tired. If you want a good retrospective video essay on the older generations of Pokemon, and this is talking about a video essay that set of video essays that I don't agree with every single point in them. I just think they're well constructed and have things to say. YouTuber King K, I'm going to give a shout out to in the process of the video. I think King K's video essays are really interesting looks at the old generations Pokemon game through a type of critical lens that I don't myself subscribe to entirely, but one that does have a lot of critical merit. And I think I'm going to shout him out here as someone whose content I enjoy. Go watch him. Do that instead of watching this. That's my recommendation. So I'm going to hop off for now. I hope people enjoyed the stream and me being upset about bad takes. Bye-bye!